Hello everyone and welcome to episode 217 of the Warhammer podcast known as Look Out Sir. My name's Dan and I'm joined as always by Phil. How you doing, mate? You alright?
I'm very good because we're in my home.
My home! The place where I dwell, exist, poo and wee.
Apparently so. Yes. Slightly different format from normal. We're just in my dining room having a chat in person as opposed to over two computers.
That's it. We're taking advantage of the fact that I don't have very much going on at the moment, so might as well travel up to Oxford and spend the day with Phil. What a time. I saw the new shed. Oh, what a place.
So it's coming along.
Mate, it's special, to be fair. I think, it's a great space. I'm very excited for you to finally get a gaming table in there so as we can, roll some dice.
It's close to happening. Close.
Mate, it looks great. The cases were, or rather the kind of cabinets were a really nice touch. It looks great, mate.
Oh, thank you very much.
They are. Seeing all your beautifully painted minis. And then, you're getting ready for No Retreat, right, as well? That's kind of like the main thing.
Yeah, that's in a month's time. Can I actually build and paint anything in time for it? Probably not.
No, not likely.
I'm sort of half trying this week, and then by the end of it I'll go, there's no time.
Yeah, exactly. So, you've got that sort of false hope at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll probably just take what I took last year.
Yeah. But it looks nice, mate. I mean, what you've done is good enough that I think you can dine out on it for
exactly.
A couple of years.
That was 3 years in the work at least.
Exactly.
So I should be able to take it to 2 events.
No, it seems like fair game. Much like what we're going to talk about in this episode, which is what, Phil?
Well, we are talking about the future of Warhammer 40K, specifically 11th edition, what it might be, what will be happening between now and then as well, and what we think will be in the box of 11th edition and what might be the rules and stuff like that.
Absolutely. All things are possible, much like a 5-star review, which this time around has been given to us by a nice individual with a name that I can't flippin' read because the flippin' box won't move out of the way. Oh, you know what it is? It's because I'm clicking the wrong thing. There we go. I was clicking right-click instead of left. Yes, given to us by a nice individual from Apple Podcasts of UK called Smith _147. So we're going to be talking about him and their 5-star review in the last segment of it. But again, obviously, thank you to Smith147 for giving us a 5-star review. And obviously, if you'd like to give us a 5-star review, we'd massively appreciate it because we're running quite dry on them at the minute. I think we're 2 away from running out of UK reviews, and then Lord knows where other reviews are left. I need to actually do a proper deep dive on this because, for the first time in a long time, Phil, we're running out of 5-star reviews.
And, we're coming up to that point of the end of the year where we decide if we're even going to bother for another year. So if there's no reviews, the show might end.
Well, that's it. That could be the death nail in Look Out Sir. Or potentially just the removal of this segment, which might actually be not a bad thing in the grand scheme of things. But it would be sad. It would be better if we just kept getting 5-star reviews out of people. Maybe what we need to do, Phil, is put it back after this bit. As in the intro bit.
Oh,
maybe
that's
we just
what was keeping people going.
That's it. Maybe we need to just reorientate it. Maybe what we've done is we've done a trial, hasn't worked, so we have to bring back the jingles, Phil, and we have to, re-embrace the way it was.
Okay.
There we go. Anyway, but thank you so much to everyone who's left us a 5-star review, and genuinely, if you would be so kind as to do so now, it would massively help us out because we are definitely running dry on them, and we'd hate to see a day where there isn't a 5-star review to be read. Noting as well, obviously, that if there are any of you out there who are waiting for your 5-star reviews to be read and we haven't got around to them yet, please reach out to us and let us know, because we do obviously want to make sure that we leave no stone unturned when it comes to acknowledging your greatness over the internet. 5-star reviews, awesome fun. Patreon, even better. If you can chuck us a couple of quid on Patreon, we'll be forever grateful, but ultimately we don't expect it. It's just a nice thing that some lovely people are able to do, and we massively appreciate them for it. Check out the details in our description. Patreon, all good stuff, as well as obviously our merchandise as well, which is created by the good people over at Rev Level. That's all of the plugs, unless I'm forgetting anything.
No, you hit them all.
Hit all those nails upon their head, which means it can only be episode 217 of the Look Out Sir podcast, where we're going to talk about the future of 40K. Transitional noise. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this part of the podcast where me and Phil are going to talk about things in the general sense, specifically Warhammer 40,000 and what we imagined it might look like in the year to come, because we're only, what now, Phil? Like 10 months away from the 11th edition.
That is probably true, yeah.
What are we now? September of the year 2025, and they're going to be releasing 40K's 11th edition in June of 26 by all accounts.
Yeah, that's normally when it is.
So that is, God, not even 10 months then. I suppose we're 9 months away. God, you can practically taste it. So
set the ticker counting down.
That's it. So we're going to do the really low-hanging fruit of podcast content and, have a chat about what we think the future of Warhammer 40,000 looks like. So we know now, through the latest series of announces, that finally Codex Imperial Knights is coming out, in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time.
Well, technically 3, because it's kind of a week of pre-order.
That's true.
Before the pre-order, and then it's 2 weeks from the pre-order.
That's true. Okay, fine. But the point this podcast comes out, it'll be 2 weeks. There we go. So we're all right. We're okay. We're safe. But 3 weeks from the time of recording, 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so we know that's coming. And at that point, assuming that they don't do Codex Chaos Demons, which feels like a safe assumption at this point.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Do you think they'll surprise us with Codex Chaos Demons as a last little, hey?
They will, in the same way that they will surprise us with Codex Deathwatch.
Well, they've already given us that in a PDF form.
Well, same with Demons.
Well, yeah, fair. Anyway, yeah, so we're going to get we're going to get Knights, Imperial Knights, and then logically there is a Codex Drakari waiting in the wings. The rumour mill says that to be true because there's been people who've seen images of characters and things.
Wasn't there one that got sent out to
Lady
someone?
What's Her Chops, yeah, I can't remember what her actual name is. It's the kind of stuff that, Drakari aficionados like myself should actually know about. But I bet they'll pull the wool over eyes anyway and make it seem like it was something, but it'll be something else, I imagine.
Or maybe.
A new character, could you imagine?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, exactly. I still just want them to bring back Vect, for goodness sake. Bring back Vect.
Well, they don't have, a really big, large character. Because a lot of armies now have that kind of the epic supreme leader person that's normally on a giant-sized base.
Yeah.
Like your Primarchs, your Silent King. They don't have anything close to that, do they?
No. Well, I mean, Vect would definitely be that if they were kind enough to release him, but they might do it. Who knows, right? Like, Vect would be cool to see. Otherwise, there were a couple of other characters from, the old 5th edition codex that Jez and Phil came up with. There was a guy called, the Headhunter, who was, a super-duper mandrake. Right. So, the mandrakes, the geezers that phase through reality and stuff. They had a version of one of them that was the most killy of mandrakes, basically. So that'd be cool if they brought him back, or they had geezer who went around on a skyboard and had an affinity for the gangs of Kamamamama or whatever it was called.
Gamora.
Yes, yeah, that one, yeah. So you never know. There's potential options, but yeah, there was back in the 3rd edition codex, there was this mini of this lady who looks more like a Blood Bowl player in retrospect. She was kind of adorning the kind of what's that really famous overly busty vampire lady in comic books? Not Red Sonja, but she's like the vampire queen equivalency. Anyway, she has that kind of iconic kind of almost like the Borat yellow swimsuit, but in red.
You thinking about Vampira?
I might be. Again, I don't know the name. I just see the cosplayers on Instagram.
She got a big beehive.
I think she does. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, and she wears just a red kind of bikini type thing.
Oh, her
that shows all the details.
Okay, that's not Vampira, but I think I can imagine who you're talking about.
We know the ones. We've seen, the particular types of Instagram models that frequent that particular kind of costume. Or at least we've heard about them, Our friends have told us about them. Yes, Joe knows about them, etc.
Yeah, Joe would know.
Exactly. But, anyway, long story short, she was kind of that kind of aesthetic, but she was similar to Lilith, really, another kind of witch. But again, I don't think she was particularly a witch. I think she was an Archon, and that was kind of her unique element, that she was a super sexy Archon lady as opposed to whom, the ugly geezer with the person's face over his face.
Right.
Yeah. Which anyway. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with Drukhari. But Drukhari will probably come before the year is done. So because Drukhari are likely to be here before the end of the year, and Imperial Knights are definitely confirmed to be here before the end of the year, that's it. And then now for 40k, we got everything, right? Like literally all the things other than generic chaos. So yeah, it makes sense. Obviously, we know that 11th edition is around the corner, but we've still got, 7-ish, 6-ish months of prime retail time. GW tends to try and end the financial year with some big releases. Like you saw it this year, right? Like by the time we got to January, they were like, before it's March, you'll be able to buy Emperor's Children, was it? And then the Death Rattle box and all this other stuff. They had some big stuff bundled into
you had
Q1.
Krieg and Elder was
oh
January.
God, yeah, it was Krieg, wasn't it?
Did we get any big Old World stuff? I think there was just some general stuff. The Old World release was January the previous year.
Yeah.
They stuffed a lot into the first few months of the year for sure.
And this is the thing, we've seen it pretty consistently because at the end of 8th edition, we got Adeptus Sororitas, the sisters. They were one of the last things to come out in 8th.
Because they got a Christmas limited edition box set that came out in November, December time, and then the main release I think was would have been shortly after in the new year.
Yeah. So we had that big thing for Sororitas at the end of 8th, and then obviously they got their second wave in 9th, and then similarly at the end of 9th we've got both the Guard were really big at the end of 9th, right? They did the big Guard release, but they also did
and World Eaters,
which were pretty huge as well, right? So they did give us, at least in the case of World Eaters, a brand new army at the end of the edition.
Yeah.
So, if things carry over in that kind of fashion, obviously we're going to get the Christmas box sets that they always do. They do a big old schmoz around those, and those will probably get announced real soon. But yeah, in terms of 40k, the model is quite well established at this point, right? We'll get the Drukhari book, and then basically they'll go, or simultaneously with the release of Drukhari book, they'll be going, hey, it's our end times events. It was the Arcs of Omen last edition. It was the Psychic Awakening, the edition before that. We'll get a whole heap of new narrative fluff that will potentially lead us into the next edition, or if it's anything like the bridge between 9th and 10th,
complete disconnect. Yeah.
That was the craziest thing, wasn't it, with Arcs of Omen, where it's we've done that now, move on. Fashtor, we've moved on.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of whiplash between those two. I mean, I got the impression, because I haven't caught up and read it, that there was a tiny bit of Ashtor in maybe the Leviathan book, but there was more of it in the Armageddon Crusade book that came out.
Definitely, and the Nachman Gauntlet as well.
Was it that one?
Yeah,
maybe
Nachman
that one
Gauntlet.
and not the Leviathan one is what I was thinking.
Yeah, because Armageddon, they've kind of with the Armageddon book, they've taken it to this direction where they're it's Khorne versus Grey Knights in a thing, which is a mad kind of change to the Armageddon fluff. Although, again, it seems like the stuff they were doing in the Armageddon series seemed really fun. I haven't comprehensively read it, but I have skimmed through the book and because I thought we were going to review it at some point. So
I think we had ideas to it, and then it just has never happened. So maybe, but prior to whatever the next Gathering Storm type event will be, we have a look back through those campaign books, even if it's just the last one, which was the Armageddon one. Feels like maybe there should be another one due, but it feels like they've only done one a year.
Well, they've done 4 so far. So they did Leviathan, Pariah Nexus,
and Armageddon,
and Nachman Gauntlet.
Was Nachman Gauntlet one as well?
Yeah, there's the Gauntlet one, mate.
Okay.
The Nachman Gauntlet is a real thing that existed. Okay. It was the one where, to be fair, the cover of it is really underwhelming. It's just like a swirling mass with the Raptor Chaos Space Marine geezer.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And also, I suppose as well, actually, as we're mentioning, just to talk about the future of things as well, we've had a really, big look into the future of Warhammer 40,000 through the leaks that have happened around Kill Team, right? So we've obviously seen the Nightbringer, and the Nightbringer was basically intended to be announced or be a release, it seems at least, as part of Kill Team.
Yes.
Which is super interesting to see what they're doing with that, right? Like Kill Teams fighting against god-level monsters.
Yeah, because I know part of the rule set allows you to have like that kind of co-op game mode, and it feels like the new box set that's come out and also sold out seemingly.
Oh mate, yeah, well, I mean, you'll be able to pick it up in actual physical Games Workshop stores at launch, but
but that obviously they made a big thing about, like, yeah, cool, you can do your Kill Team versus like a bunch of Necrons and stuff like that. Sorry, but by generic Necrons, it's like they're the NPCs, somewhat pseudo deck controlled or some way of doing it. So there's like an AI mechanic to them. So you can have two people, I presume playing as the Marines and not as the Necrons, and Necrons are just controlled by whatever the mechanics are that they've ruled out. So yeah, it feels like maybe it's leaning more into that. Or do you think it would be one person is like, cool, I've got the Nightbringer, and the other person has a team of something to take them down? What would you put up against the Nightbringer?
I mean, well, I always like the idea of like asymmetric gameplay experiences. Like, I think it actually would be a really fun thing, because you look at like video games like Death by Daylight, those or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, games like that, where it's admittedly, anyway, let's not get into the particulars of that. Let's use Death by Daylight, right? That's a game where 4 players are trying to escape one player controlled monster. And I quite like that as a game mode, although in this instance maybe it's just a case of you're trying to like kill it, but maybe that's the thing, maybe you're not trying to kill it, maybe you're just like doing like, imagine, I suppose, almost like it's almost like an extraction type gameplay experience where you're getting in, doing missions,
stealing some treasure,
yeah, and then the Nightbringer's going around being like, oi,
chasing you.
Exactly, don't do that. So it's like a PvE experience where you and an opponent are playing against each other, but there is this Nightbringer that is just this wild element, and almost like you could imagine like adding in like stealth mechanics where, like, I don't know, you could lure him in certain directions or like do things to kind of manipulate.
Yeah, I guess he's definitely one thing in the box, but would he be the only Necron thing in that box? Because obviously there would be an opposing team of some kind, but it could be that, as you say, you still get Necrons in that box, and you get, let's say, Space Marines for the sake of it, like some opposing force, and then the Nightbringer is there as effectively a roaming monster. And because ultimately, if the Nightbringer, let's say, he's just waking up, he might not be that friendly to the Necrons that are there. He might be like, I'm going after all of you.
Well, I mean, especially with the current kind of fluff that basically the Necrons are their captors, right? These are shards of the gods, and maybe again, there's all sorts of really interesting narrative elements that they could add to it. But again, the reason I suppose I brought it up was more because, again, we were talking about the Nachmund Gauntlet stuff, and I remember they had the Raptor minis on the cover of that, and then I was like, oh yeah, they've got new Raptor models coming, haven't they, as part of this like Kill Team release. And then, but yeah, it gives us a unique insight because obviously Kill Team is very evidently, with the type of like terrain that they've just put out and their upcoming aspirations around the release, are going to just continue to support that kind of Necron Tomb World type aesthetic, which is super cool.
So obviously the last time they did it, it was the boarding action.
So like Space Hulk-esque, basically. Space
Hulk-esque, sort of Imperial ships with the Arcs of Omen series, and that does, I think, potentially tie into whatever this new Arcs of Omen series will be. The end times for 40K that wraps up this edition would make sense that it does tie into this Necron terrain that they're doing for Kill Team, because that's what they did last edition. So it does sort of follow a pattern where they're like, cool, we're going to release a load of Necron terrain across 3 different Kill Teams. We're probably going to sell it separately so you can do boarding actions in a Necron themed Tomb World. And whatever. So I guess that potentially means it's all going to be in the Pariah Nexus will be the setting for this. Would make sense. And I guess it's somehow leading up to the Nightbringer coming, even though he's already in the game, but it's like in the lore, wakening up or doing something.
The Nightbringer Ascendant, as it were.
Maybe,
the new version of him.
The new version of him comes out.
Yeah. I mean, but again, what I like about the way that they've taken Kill Team in that direction, though, is potentially we'll see an opportunity for GW not to be so constrained by what they have to do with this end time event, right? Because that was the mad thing about Arcs of Omen, was Arcs of Omen didn't really have a coherent narrative. It had a overarching plot, but that plot didn't really seem to factor into things, at least not, fully. It always felt quite tangential. It was always that thing where you're like, cool, from the start, Abaddon and Vashtor getting together and they're looking for keys. Everyone's happy. Here's a Vashtor mini. Everyone makes sense of that. Here's a cool box with him versus Deathwing Terminators and all this kind of good stuff. And at the time, obviously, they'd done like a new Azrael sculpt, so they chucked that into the mix. And they were like, okay, well, who's Vashtor going to have a fight with? Well, the Dark Angels. Why? Because we've got Azrael and we want to release Azrael. Okay, great. And then they went from that. And I don't know if it was book 2 or book 3, but I think book 2 was Angron.
Yeah, book 2 was Angron.
And then book 3 was, and Angron was very much a case of, we're going to be releasing World Eaters, shove some Angron stuff in there. Book 3 was where it was like, and now, for no reason at all, Farsight and Orcs. And it was like, right, what are they doing?
That story felt like very little to do with the overall Arcs of Omen. It was a bit of a sort of side quest. I think they sort of teased that is how the line came back. I remember what they were on the planet that basically Farsight and that lot fled to off-world after being chased away by the orcs, and that's on a planet that summoned loads of demons, but they found like an odd sort of ship or craft, and they never really explained what that was, but it sort of felt like it was to do with the line in some sort of fashion, I think. And then I think there was a bit of lore snippets that teased was it Sanguinor, I think, as well? There was a bit about Blood Angels being in there as well. Yeah,
they did do a bit of Blood Angels stuff in there. But that was the thing, because it was 5-book series, wasn't it? So I think it started on Abaddon, then maybe Vashtor was book 2.
Oh, yeah.
And then book 3 was Angron. Book 4 was
the
Farsight book, and then
the last one was the Lion.
And then the last one was the Lion. And the Lion was then basically put in a fight with Angron for no real reason at all, because they didn't really have much of a beef beforehand. It was just more a case of, we've got a Lion model and we've got a Angron model, let them kiss. It was a bit sort of...
Yeah, so I think what I vaguely remember now is that was it. The Blood Angels pick up the Lion, so he's hanging out with them on their ship. They chase down effectively this
That's right, because Dante got released as well during that thing.
Dante.
Yeah, that was it.
They basically find the Lion's home planet of Caliban that's been mutated. It's like a sort of replica that's all chaosified.
Correct, yeah.
Of their world. So they go down and they're all fighting there. Meanwhile, obviously Vashtor and Abaddon are doing like their thing to do with the planet and the sort of weird world engine or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
But they were trying to do. I can't remember why Angron was there, but he was, and they were having a big old fight.
Because the studio made a model and they needed to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, probably. It sort of, yeah, I mean, with the Tomb World one, it sort of feels like, cool, it's about the setting of, I assume, a Tomb World, right? Because that's what the scenery is. But it's like, but anyone could be on those planets having a beef. It doesn't need to just be Necrons versus something else. Obviously, you got that for the first box, but the second one could be, well, I assume it's going to be the Night... the Raptors guys.
Well, it looks like it. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be Raptors versus Sororitas, or at least that's coming down the pipeline.
So no Necrons needed, but they could still be on that same sort of, or similar Tomb World planet where they're just fighting over these sorts of stuff. Even the last one doesn't need to necessarily have Necrons in, but could, in addition to the Nightbringer. Odd, because this one feels like it's a free series, and I felt like the Kill Team ones, there was maybe 4, but maybe it was just 3 actually.
What's that in
terms of like the big box sets that they did for the
Well, for this Kill Team edition, they did the first one, which was Scions, not Scions, sorry. Oh, no, they are. The Tempestus Scions, but they're not called Scions, they're Aquilons.
Oh, the Aquilons.
Yeah, Aquilons, yes, thank you. Aquilons into Vespids, and then they did Orcs into Squats? Not Squats, sorry, Orcs into Halflings. Rattlings, yes.
Oh no, I meant more the sort of not boarding actions. It wasn't called Arcs of Omen, but the Arcs of Omen series that was the Kill Team specific.
Oh ones. Yeah, no, that was just called
Into the Dark.
Into the Dark, yes. Yeah.
So I think maybe it was just 3 boxes that they did.
Yeah, they did. God, I can't remember all of them. I remember one of them had Votan, one of them had
there was
breaches.
RBTs, there was Navy breaches.
Yeah,
I mean, there was
anyway. Yeah, there was lots. There was lots.
But it felt like, I couldn't remember if it was 3 or 4 like big boxes they did. I think
it was 3 or so. Yeah, and they just came with like really like bespoke kind of like tokens and things.
So the first one had the big box. Well, actually, I think everyone had the big box.
Yeah, you got the boarding action,
but then you also got a bolt-on of like limited stuff as well.
Yeah, so like doors and panels and drop pods, weirdly as well.
So sort of like little escape pods, and one of them had walls that you could blow out and breach.
Oh yeah, God, that was cool.
Specifically, and there was a bunch of like cool like little terrain pieces, like sort of heavy bolter sentry guns and stuff.
Yeah, it was cool.
So it was worth sort of picking up.
But I think that's the thing, though, right? What I'm saying, though, with this Kill Team stuff, and what seems quite promising, if it is that the Nightbringer is going to come as predominantly a Kill Team miniature. Again, it could be a bit of the tail wagging the dog here as well, though, right? Because it could be that they've shoehorned him into Kill Team because he's going to be one of these releases as part of this kind of like end times piece. But it almost feels more sensible. It's like you've created a Necron setting, put some Necron characters in Kill Team, and that is an excuse for releasing those Necron characters. And potentially what that means is because I think there's the thing, Psychic Awakening wasn't a particularly strong series of books, but I always felt like Psychic Awakening made a bit more sense in the idea that it was the Psychic Awakening was dealing with a kind of overarching narrative of the idea of since the big rift, everyone's become a bit more psychically aware, but it was leading to Necrons, right? So it started with Draxus and kind of led to Necrons, which then obviously dovetailed into the release of 9th edition, which was Necrons versus Space Marines.
Right, yeah.
And so the whole thing kind of at least arbitrarily had a narrative through line, even though, okay, in that one we ended up with like Saga of the Beast, where for no reason at all, we're following the escapades of Ragnar Blackmane versus Ghazghkull Frucker. Yeah. But again, they kind of were like contained narratives, and again, it was Ghazghkull's ascension to his newer kind of form, where he was even bigger and stronger.
I think you basically get 2 types of ways of doing it. Yeah. You go, cool, let's do a narrative, ideally cohesive story that's sort of has an arc sort of story thread going all the way through. Yeah. But ultimately you have a pick and mix of characters that have been randomly selected by the design team of this is the models that we're going to release at this time. Or you go, well, there is no storyline, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at individual sort of planets and worlds and their own battles. But as you said, there might be a thematic thread, like with Pariah, not Pariah Nexus, the Psychic Awakening. Because as you say, that didn't really feel like there was a story there at all. And I thought the books were a success because each one focused on 1 or 2 armies, gave them a whole host of like rules that really supersized their capability in terms of what they could do, in terms of like stratagems and access to upgrades and things like that. So from a gaming perspective, I would say they were probably more successful, but as a story, there wasn't really one, I don't think.
Well, I think that was the thing with, I would assert that in the years 2017 through 2020, when the team that was working on 8th edition were working on 8th edition, I think that team within Games Workshop were better established, and I think they were cooking much better. And they knew that 9th edition was iterative. They knew that 9th edition was going to fundamentally still support the books of old. Right. And that was kind of like a mission statement of Psychic Awakening, was make these things compatible. So bring them up so as when 9th edition comes out, these armies are more viable in this world of insane customization and choice that we're about to give people, right? So like that always felt like the main kind of like mission statement of the Psychic Awakening. Whereas Arcs of Omen, they knew that they were basically getting rid of everything. So it became more themed around the idea of like, we're releasing these miniatures and releasing these things, but they're not, it's not really a huge volume of like meaningful rules content necessarily. It's just here's a few characters, and they were really proactive in releasing all those army rules that were in Arcs of Omen as PDFs separately at the time.
I sort of feel like Arcs of Omen was good because it was are you bored of playing 40k? Yes, here's boarding actions. It's a completely new way to play. It was really tailored. It really shrunk the scope of the main 2,000 point game down, got rid of a load of the bloat from the game, because it basically gave you a prelude to what 10th edition was, which was you get a detachment that is double page spread. Those are your rules for your army, and that's exactly how the armies were presented in the boarding actions. And I think a lot of people enjoyed that sort of smaller game size. And I think, the times I have played it, even in this edition, has been probably more enjoyable than just standard 40k.
I agree.
Will they be basically just do it? And what it was different game mode, right? It wasn't, here's a bunch of rules that are going to be invalidated. I mean, you could argue they were, but what they did is they still supported all of those missions. They basically brought out the boarding actions book that was like, here's the 10th ed version of it with the same missions. In fact, I think originally they did like a PDF.
They did,
just, here's how you can convert it, and you can still play with all the old stuff as well. And I assume they're just going to do that again, but with Necron stuff now. So it's like, okay, here's boarding actions. You all forgot about it. Now let's all play boarding actions for the next, 6 to 8 months. As a little appetizer for the end of the edition, basically.
Or at least this time around, from what I hear from people who've got the box and have built the terrain, it's a lot easier to not necessarily put together. It's still GW plastic, so it's still the same kind of overly engineered mess in terms of putting it together, but it goes together a lot easier. The new kind of
it's like the columns and the walls and stuff. It does look like it goes together a lot.
But that was the dumbest thing about boarding actions, is just how horrible it was to put together in terms of like actually using it as a gaming piece. Like everyone I've ever spoken to who and myself who has played boarding actions, it's like I spent an hour building the board. Like, it was just madness.
I'm convinced. So obviously, as we're recording, we're in my house, everyone, which I'm sure we talked about at the very beginning.
We would have done, I would have assumed, even though we haven't recorded that bit.
No,
timey-wimey.
Exactly, it will get done. So I was showing Dan, I've got a space, the new shed. I'm going to get a gaming table, and there's like one of my number one projects is basically taking the boarding actions terrain and basically building that out and painting it up. But I think what I will be doing is I will be building it in like Necromunda, like preset tiles of rooms and corridors. So I can't physically one-to-one match up every single mission board map that you get prescribed, because every boarding actions and kill team game that uses it gives you an exact map of how everything needs to be laid out exactly. But instead I'll be just, having pre-made tiles, and it's like, cool, but the speed of dropping down, say, 6 tiles with pre-made terrain on will be infinitely much better, I think.
Oh, without a doubt,
spending, as you say, at least an hour. Because the times I have done boarding actions with someone, we will play one game, and then we will go, oh, we got time for a second game. And I'll be like, cool, let's just keep the terrain the same, because we don't have time to disassemble it all and rearrange it, because that it will just take up too much time.
It's a wild part of how that system, one of the real kind of fail states that system kind of suffers under, for sure, is the idea that on a surface level they gave you something that was truly customizable and really modular and really great, but in a practical sense it just falls short of every one of those expectations, right? It's like, this is good in theory, but in practice, oh god. And it almost feels like the Necron adaptation is that R&D element where they basically went, oh yeah, we mucked that up. Here's a better version.
It's slightly better. How much better, I don't know, because it feels like you'll still have that same setup time.
Yeah.
Because quite often it was actually, you've got to look at the map, then you've got to look at the key for, because each wall is labelled like A1, A2, B1,
That's true,
B2.
Yeah.
Then you need to find the pieces that correspond to that, which have no reference to what that is, unless you correspond it with the key in the legend to work out what each pieces are. Once it's painted, you could arguably have something painted on it to denote which each one is. I guess there's also a trade-off between it all flat packs down, so you could probably store it quite easily. So I've got all the basically 2 pieces of boarding action. Well, 2 lots of kill teams, which makes 1 boarding action set. Then all the expansion bits that they did for that Into the Dark, Gallo Dark series. And that all compacts down into the very original box that I bought, which was the Kill Team one in, sort of all flat pack. Now, as if I was to build that out into rooms and shapes that are like pre-built, that would take up a lot more storage space. And it's that sort of trade-off of, speed and setup versus like how much you can flat pack. But then I probably wouldn't want to flat pack that terrain, because if you're all squashing it in, the paint's all going to chip off and stuff like that.
Yeah. And from a height perspective, I mean, the walls are probably not much higher than like 5 inches, 4 inches or something like that. So, like, I mean...
Not even that, I would say. It's like, 3.5 probably.
Yeah, so in that sense, that small, plus a board underneath it, you're going to be looking at probably a total height of, say, 4 inches then. And at that point, you're like, well, it's quite a condensed little thing, especially if you're doing them in... Because I don't know how you would break it down, because I can forget what the board size is for it. But say it's 4x4, you can just build, 4 1x1 tiles. Would that be right? No, you buy really, 8
technically
1x1
you can't do them in square
tiles
because you will end up basically with you need an extra half tile that ends, because it's basically 60 by...
Oh, they built it around 60 by 30 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the standard 40K tables. Like, well, two of the kill teams together combined with boarding actions, which is...
So it's 30 by 22, is it?
Yeah, it's like slightly weird size.
Yeah.
So you can't make the tiles complete squares.
So you'd probably just break it down into 4 rectangles and call it a day.
Well, or do tiles and you've got some half tiles, but then you can reposition those tiles in different ways to alternate the layout a little bit, potentially.
Sounds like an interesting design project, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. It would be something.
Build like a frame for it to go in or something, and then it sort of like then sort of seamlessly goes together, so as any of the kind of...
Yeah.
And then, you'll obviously use like the grid system that they create around like how the boards are kind of laid out to, hide any of the obvious kind of mergers between the different lines. I mean, I will say that the Zone Mortalis stuff that they do for Necromunda is phenomenal at achieving that modularity. The problem is it's extraordinarily expensive to build a board of it. Yeah. And it is also massively impractical in the sense that the amount of actual board real estate that the walls take up is actually quite absurd.
Yeah, and that's the main difference between the two. And I always criticise the boarding actions because it just felt very flat, because the walls are so thin. Yeah. And there's a bit of detail on it because it's like, how the mold making process works. You can't have undercuts and stuff. So it does, you've got basically little bumps here and there of detail, but it's not a whole like amount, and everything's at like right angles to each other.
Yeah.
So it does feel very, angular and sort of artificial, whereas the Necromunda stuff feels much more realistic, even though their walls are, massively chunky.
Yeah.
You almost want just something in between. And annoyingly, so, because I've looked into it, the heights of the boarding actions and the Zone Mortalis aren't compatible.
No,
they're slightly
not.
off. The sizes of the walls and the columns that you get in boarding actions can't fit on the Necromunda tiles. Those two systems unfortunately aren't that compatible. Although, then maybe there's a way around it, but it's not.
But if you buy into the Zone Mortalis system within the Necromunda terrain system, and the Necromunda terrain system is also as I understand it, or at least as I remember it, is also compatible with the Sector Mechanicus and Sector Imperialis stuff. Yeah. So you have lots of Imperialis, Mechanicus, Necromunda sets. My God, it's like a playground of possibilities there. But that's the thing with the boarding action stuff. It's almost kind of, not arbitrarily, I would say very purposely been built to kind of not be compatible with those systems, to sort of be its own thing, I guess.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and I guess it makes sense, but like the Necron stuff doesn't look at all compatible with the boarding existing Gallo Dark boarding action stuff.
I don't think it is, at least in terms of like...
The joining pieces definitely are.
They're definitely
not, completely different.
Yeah, they use like a hexagon style, or not a hexagon, but they use like a angular style thing.
But thematically, it sort of doesn't make sense, but the only reason why I'd almost like them to merge together in some way is so you can be like, okay, cool, this is like an imperial world, but then the dark corners of the facility, there is this sort of tomb world that does exist that they've dug too deep, and it's slowly awakening, and the walls reveal the Necron symbols beneath it. It's like even when you played Space Marine 2, spoilers for the sort of towards the end of that game, that's sort of what they're doing. They're sort of mining on an imperial planet, and towards the very bottom of that, I think the mining area that they're excavating is these Necron walls and pieces that you see.
Well, that's the thing. So the Shadow Hunt Kill Team box set that they are releasing with the Raptors versus the Sororitas does that kind of thing. So they basically have an Imperial world juxtaposed with so it's almost like the upside down. If you look at that image there of so that's their kind of kill zone idea.
Yes. So yeah, they're two separate boards, but one is representing the underworld facility that is beneath the above ground one, which is good. And they've done.
I also think they've introduced. Why did I feel like there's like a time travel element to it as well that they've done? Yeah, so there's like a thing where like if you do something in the past, it's there. So if you open a door in one thing, it's
Bill
like,
and Ted style.
Yeah, or maybe I'm getting confused with something else at this point. But anyway, like
that would be interesting mechanic. I mean, I do love the little doors that they've got there, like the Necron portals.
Yeah, stuff. They do seem to have some really, really cool elements and ideas for sure. But anyway, yeah, look, the Kill Team thing is interesting, and again, because obviously this stuff is leaked, it gives us a vision towards that happening there. I would just like, for me personally, I just want to see Games Workshop kind of tie a bow around the tyrannic war stuff that they started at the beginning of this edition, right? Like, obviously, the edition starts and the Tyranids are invading from the west, and they never came from that direction before, so it's another tendril of the Tyranids. Have they been splintered by, the rift and the warp? Have they kind of like, has this whole situation kind of influenced them in a way? What's next for the Nids really and what they're doing? Because I'd like them just to kind of give us something in that regard. Because again, the rumor is that the next box set is going to be Orcs versus Space Marines, a very kind of traditional box set proposition.
Right, yeah.
So again, it's that thing where it's like, okay, cool. So inevitably, because the stakes always have to be crazy, we're going to be building up to some insane war again. Gazkol Fracker will be back on the move. The beast arises once more. Some other kind of crazy stuff's going to be happening. And because again, obviously the threat level always has to be, absolute crazy right now. But yeah, just, with the way they kind of started out the edition and did things with Leviathan, it's like, okay, cool. What is kind of coming next? Because again, during the early campaign that influenced the narrative, the Tyranids won. And the Tyranids won, and as a result, they got their reveal first and all this other bits, right?
Oh, right, yeah. That if you have a chance to build and play a game with your box, literally within the first 2 weeks of it coming out, you can record a result, and it's like, okay, pretty much no one's doing that. Everyone's just probably submitting a false game, unless you are somehow super productive and able to do it, like the YouTubers or whoever get early access. That one felt interesting, and as you said, Tyranids did win. I think most people just voted for it because they're like, just not Space Marines.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was it, though, right? Regardless of the potential legitimacy of their win, they did win, and we were told there would be, at least in the short term, the reveals, but then there could be sort of sweeping narrative things that come from that.
Okay.
And I think that's it, right? I just like to see them just tie a bow around it and just be like, yeah, you know, Tigerius pits his brain against the Hive Fleet or the Norn Queen or whatever it is, and which is stuff that's kind of happened before, and it's all got a bit mad. But it's like, you know, like kill teams going into the heart of it and pushing it back, or some kind of virus bomb or something. You know, like, I would like it if Belisarius Cawl in concert with, you know, Ultramarine, Tyranid veterans did something just to basically put a little bit of a stop on it. Like, I'd like to see,
cool story.
Yeah, I'd like to see a narrative where the Imperium pushes back and is actually, because that was always the thing with, like, the events of the Gathering Storm were that, oh no, everything's terrible, but then Guilliman turns up and then they basically launch the Indomitus Crusade and they're like, yeah, push it back.
What basically they could have done is, rather than doing Necron-themed terrain for this kill team, it could have been Tyranid-themed terrain and basically reverse Space Hulk. It is the Terminators invading the Tyranid like ships. You've got to plant the mega bomb to blow it up. I think that would have a lot of callback to things like Space Crusade as well, which was I think it had an expansion that had the sort of Tyranid.
It did, the Tyranid warrior one.
Yeah, so they could have done something like that, and as you said, it would have tied in. Maybe they will still do that for a future year, because this is sort of the Pariah Nexus sort of story that they're doing. There was a great, I think it was the Octarius campaign books in, it must be 9th edition. Basically, it was Tyranids were running rampant, and what they do is the Inquisitor, not Coaches, it was the other guy, whose name I can't remember, but I think he's the one that got the limited edition commemorative mini. He basically pitches the orcs against the Tyranids, so they're basically fighting each other. They create this massive cordon all around the sector of like sort of shield wall planets to defend. So those two kind of crazy species are just sort of fighting it out, and they're trying to contain them. But I think they eventually break out, and it's like that sort of story could have worked for this sort of wrapping up story. It's like, okay, how are we dealing with the Tyranid problem? We can't deal with it. I say we as in the Imperium can't deal with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some of the orcs involved and sort of lure the orcs to fight the Tyranids. And then that could introduce the orcs for the next edition.
I kind of like the idea as well, though, because, you know, the idea of these guys coming from, like, the Western sector or wherever it is, it's almost like, oh, the Nachman Gauntlet, not the Nachman Gauntlet, sorry, the Great Rift, the, thank you. Yeah, well, no. What's the actual rift called in the old Gothic terminology? They came up with it. It's like the sector. I forgot what it is now. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Great Rift. They you know, maybe
Cicatrix Maledictum.
That's it. The Cicatrix Maledictum. Thank you. You know, maybe that has splintered them off, and that's why they were coming in, because actually, like, they've basically been torn in half by the fact, and then it was like, oh, here we go, and like maybe it's that they were a force of Tyranids that was kind of part of the bit on the east, but because it got ripped in, it sort of like was taken out from where it was, and then maybe that explains why they can deal with it, because it becomes a case of, oh, actually, it turns out it's not a tendril, it's just a clump. And it's like, you know, and it
doesn't have unlimited resources.
Yeah, it doesn't have unlimited resources, so they are able to push it back. Because this is the thing I find with Tyranids, which is driving me a little bit crazy about them in the modern 40K setting, is Tyranids made sense in 10 Minutes to Midnight because they were the inevitable demise, right? Like, they were going to kill everything in the end because they just were, right? Like, and again, I love when they introduce the idea of, oh, they're running from something or whatever, like there's an even worse thing behind them. But regardless if there was something worse behind them, the Imperium and everything within the part of space that is 40K was not going to survive them, right? Because every time anyone encountered them, the only way that anyone ever pushed them back was Ultramar did it after basically, well, not Ultramar, Macragge did it after lots and lots of Ultramar fell and lots of other bad things happened. And then basically it was because the Tyranids were fighting on two fronts. So they were basically fighting against Macragge, but also I think they were also up against maybe the Iand and Craft World simultaneously. So the whole thing was like, it's one tendril split in two directions.
Yeah.
They basically didn't manage their resources properly, and then they were repelled as a result. The situation always felt like they always gave the Nids way too much power, and they were always like this super enemy. Whereas I'd like to see the Nids take a few L's. Like, I'd actually like them to find themselves dying off and being useless for a bit, because at least then you can add some narrative nuance to them where you actually kind of expose some weaknesses and make them more interesting than just YOLO, or not YOLO, but just sort of spoilers, we win, you know?
Right. I would actually say I always thought it was the other way around, where it was like they do ultimately lose, but they do it in that kind of weird compromise where it's like the Imperium have either had to destroy a bunch of their own planets to try and reduce the biomass that the Tyranids can consume to sort of weaken them, or they divert them off in a different direction. So this planet is saved, but some other future planet is going to be destroyed because they're still inevitably coming. And I would just rather it be like, no, they are the slow inevitable demise, and they are coming, and they are eating things, and they are almost unstoppable. Whereas it feels like they are actually like, they're kind of always losing, but in a really like polite way.
But I think that's the problem, though, isn't it? Right, the slow inevitable demise makes sense in the setting of the world before the
time period moves forward. Is what you mean? Because ultimately, I mean, they could be like, cool, this tiny section of the map is now eaten with Tyranids, and it's going very slowly. I think you can't ramp up the speed of which that they do.
I don't want to ramp up the speed, but I'd like there to be a situation where it's like actually like Imperium are quite good at just dealing with them now, or like they are a problem and they are trouble, but they're not super powered. They're just powerful. But it's like, but if controlled in the right kind of way and dealt with the right sort of things, it's like a treatment of any kind of terrifying disease. It's like we catch it early, we deal with it, and it's harder, right? Like, I mean, maybe things like the gene stealer cults become more easily expunged, and then it becomes, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like Nids to me right now just feel like they're starting to make less and less sense, because at this point, like, you've moved the storyline on a few hundred years. It's like, well, surely at this point they basically should be eating everything. Like, it just starts to get a bit crazy. And then when you introduce the idea that they're attacking on two fronts, you're like, well, this is just game over.
That's why I felt like, the introduction of a new, tyrannic war wasn't really needed.
No.
Because ultimately, you're just ramping it up more than it needs to be. It's like, I don't know. Is it just giving them a narrative justification to be fighting against a bunch of different space marines or different in a different sort of setting? It's almost like the concept of the problem with the old world is, how can Tomb Kings be fighting against Norskans because they're at complete opposite ends of the map?
Yeah.
So it feels like same with the fifth sphere expansion, I think, is the one that sort of disappeared and then reappeared somewhere else, because they need justification for the Tau to be fighting not just Ultramarines, and they need the Tyranids to be fighting not just Ultramarines as well. Bizarrely. And maybe that's why they've done it, but I don't know. Just it seemed a puzzling choice to, rather than just move on with, because they could have just done any story focusing on Tyranids, rather than, oh yes, they've magically appeared on the other side of the galaxy. Doom is even closer. It's like, well, that isn't narratively telling me anything else than what was originally done, other than you're sort of artificially moving the doomsday clock another second to midnight. I guess, but that to me is complete meaningless. It feels very hollow as a narrative point.
But that's what I'd love to see if they're doing like an end time style event, that they go back to just kind of wrapping a bow around the Nids and actually give the Imperium a win for the first time in a while. Like, I think it's just getting to the point, and I felt this at the start of 10th edition, where they were just showing how totally in trouble they were, and I'm just like, well, this is starting to become ridiculous. Like, how, like, narratively, how do you get yourself out of this hole? And it's like, really, the Imperium needs to start to feel powerful. Like, it needs to have, like, some wins under its belt, significant wins, not just desperate wins. Everything is always desperate. Everything is at the last grasp of breath. And it's like that thing, it's like, if you follow the events of like the fall of Baal, where the Nids basically attacked like the Blood Angels, they basically won because Khorne helped them out, and effectively that was the whole thing. The idea is Kabanda has essentially been like, I'm going to kill them. Was like, well, mate, like just turn up that afternoon. Like you've just saved them from the Nids. Why didn't you just roll in and kill them? Because it was at the point of at the end of the events of the fall of Baal or whatever, the devastation of Baal. It was basically 10 Blood Angels chilling out, hoping for the best, or like maybe 20 of them, right? They were absolutely done for. So it's like, cool. But then it's like, what? It's Commander there going, yes, I want to defeat them, but I want to defeat them when they're at full strength because I have some weird, misguided sense of honor. It's like, well, just go and get them. They're done. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's like, you want to kill Dante, like, go get him. It's fair game.
I mean, that's fair, but I would say, actually, it feels like more around, maybe it's more 10th edition stuff, is the timeline always feels like the Imperium's on the attack, because they've done the whole thing about the Crusade, the Indomitus Crusade. It felt like there was a very brief period of time where they're like, the Cicatrix Maledictum has happened. Imperium's on the back foot,
and then they push back with the Primarchs stuff,
and then immediately they go, well, this is the retcon they did. They immediately went, and then 100 years later, Primaris is everywhere, and the Indomitus Crusade has resupplied everyone, and we're sort of back to normal. And then they've gone, well, actually, no, let's play out the Indomitus Crusade because this is a really interesting thing. But it's immediately the Imperium is on the war footing, and they're the ones pushing back again. So it's everything's more desperate than ever before. But then it doesn't feel like they're on the defensive still. It feels more like they're designed to be on the attack. And sadly it's the same story with Sigmar and Age of Sigmar, because it's like their whole setting was Chaos had won, and the Empire of Man, that it once was an order, got pushed back to the realm of Vizier. But now we're pushing out with the new Stormcast, and the Stormcast are reclaiming the lands. And it's like, oh, it's the same story, basically. Just from a different perspective. And to be fair, I think the Stormcast one came first, and that the Imperium 40K Crusade came afterwards, but it ultimately feels just very similar, that the good guys have to be in the position of strength and attack rather than in defense, although a lot of the more traditional stories tend to be Imperium getting their teeth kicked in. And like, if you think about Armageddon, it's orcs invading an Imperial planet. If you think about most places, it tends to be Xenos invading or Chaos invading in the Imperium, because the Imperium is, like, I guess, the main setting, I guess. That
was always my point, though, and that was always the narrative. Like, all the major events of the world that was before the events of the Fall of Cadia or the Gathering Storm, it was always surviving by the skin of their teeth and then seemingly rebuilding for the future. But the thing is a lot of the time, because of where the timeline sat, you didn't have to worry about what came next. It was just the story of just about escaping defeat. The events of Hell's Reach, the Black Templars, the Salamanders, and the forces of the Steel Hell's Reach, the events of Armageddon, these armies push back an Orc war, right? But they narrowly did it and almost lost. And that's how that series of events ends in that timeline. It's like, cool, Armageddon, as per the stories of the World of Warhammer 40,000 of old, it ended at the point where they barely held on. So if anything else came along, they were done, right? Like, if anything else came along and followed it, like an army of Dark Elder or Drakari, as they call these days, comes along, they're done for, and it was always, but then the reason why the Drakari Dark Elder weren't doing that is they were under their own pressure and dealing with their own nonsense, and they were more of a raiding force. But that's the thing, like, all those narratives, all those events were always just narrowly escaping, to the point where, I love the 40K universe. I think it's super cool, but I think that's the thing I'm saying is, like, at this point, I'd like them to finish off the Nid stuff and just kind of, if I'm honest with you, just address the stuff that they started this edition with and just go, cool, it's not a problem anymore. Move on. We've dealt with it. Right. We went over there, and it turns out that they're not actually attached to anything. They're just a clump of stuff that's ended up over here. and Roberto Guilliman and the Lion, brofist like in Predator, and they go and they murk them all, and that's the end of it. And then they're like, "Way, it's all great." And just as they're celebrating, orcs appear, and it's like, "Oh no, this is a problem." And then we go from there, and then maybe, Leman Russ emerges from the warp and comes to save them, or Rogel Dawn, or some other Primarch character that inevitably is going to get released will come into the fray and be, and maybe, and I think it should be Lehman. I think given everything they've just done with the Space Wolves, I'd love to see them do like a really early second wave of Space Wolf stuff in the middle of next year as like a big thing for 11th, where it's like, Lehman Russ leading a bunch of mutated Wolfen into the fray. And Lehman Russ himself is actually more of a feral wolf character, and actually being more of that kind of thing where he's spent ages in the warp and he's basically succumbed to more. And again, I'm not saying that he loses his heroic bearing and he's not still kind of human in appearance, and as human as a Primarch can be, but he is more of a kind of feral warrior king than and is fighting alongside. So he's bearded and hench, and his war gear is tatty, and his bearing is more feral and bestial. It's not like a noble warrior. It's more of a something of that nature.
The only reason why I probably don't want to see Lehman Russ is they've done such a great job of the new chapter master.
Oh, Logan
Grimnar.
Yeah.
Like, his model's fantastic. He's really big. It is on that kind of supersized Supreme Leader style base.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any reason why you can't have the two side by side.
Well, yeah, because who thinks Minus Kargar is cool now that Gilliman's out? No one. He used to be a big deal, and now he's a sort of a nothing burger, unfortunately.
He is.
And I feel like I don't want to see that happen to...
I think, and I've always said it, I think it would be super interesting if they made it that Logan and the current day Space Wolves were a treacherous bunch of evil people. And then they brought in these new kind of like wolf and feral ones that were the good guys. But the thing is the Space Wolf fans hate that stuff. And they're like, no, they're pure. Everyone always thinks they're heretics, but they're not really.
I would almost rather have Lehman Russ and a bunch of corrupted Space Wolves from the warp come back, and that they're more corrupted. And it's, he's sort of, but you could do it so he's towing the line. He's touched by evil, but he's not fully corrupted by chaos. But,
I just think it's more interesting because of the way that the seeds they planted with Logan Grimnar, that he's the evil one.
With the axe.
Yeah, the axe and stuff, yeah. But maybe it's that they don't know it, and then there's a thing of it. There's an interesting narrative there, which they won't do because they have to kind of keep it simple. But my point is that, I want to see... That's the thing I'm hoping for in this kind of end time style event for it now, is like literally let's just address the thing that we've created and set up the reason why the orcs are now the next problem. Let's not okay, yeah, fair enough. Vashtor is still sort of around doing his thing, and the Nakman Gauntlet was a thing, and the events on Armageddon were interesting with the Grey Knights pushing back and fighting against Khorne. All of that's cool, right? And that's good in its own right. But I think, as a core narrative around the Imperium, address the Nids, introduce a new Primarch probably, and take us forward. I don't, by the way, I hate myself for saying it, bring out the new Primarch, but Games Workshop have sales targets, and Primarchs,
they do seem to do it. I'll address one other point before we talk about Primarchs.
Yeah, please.
And it's like the first deck of cards that came out were all like Leviathan themed, and then I think they did Prior Nexus. They gave up on that concept at all. And originally, the concept of theming a year around like a season like they do in Age of Sigmar, where it's got a bit more of a setting, I like that in principle, but it never really feels like in 40k they've really sort of followed it through, with the exception, I would say, of the Gallow Dark / boarding actions period, where it's like, because you've got terrain basically, and it's like, cool, you're all fighting on space hulks or ships of some kind, and that's very cool. Like with what 10th edition could have been is much more themed around, Tyranids are fighting everywhere. a lot of the games that you're playing can be or either against Tyranid players or themed on like Tyranid infested worlds, or worlds that might fall to Tyranids because of a Gene Stealer cult or something. And the missions and the actions that you can do, and I mean that is in terms of in-game actions that they got rid of but then sort of brought back, it could all be around that. So it feels like you're thematically playing a game, and they've only just announced that they're going to release the Tyranid terrains that they did for Guild Team sort of individually. So, well, they could have done that like a year ago and given us more like, here's more Tyranid content and how to slightly theme your Imperial world with a scattering of Tyranid, spires and chimneys and eggs or whatever it might be. And then you've got missions which interact with those bits to theme the year, or at least the edition, with going, cool, feels very like Tyranny based, and the next edition will be Orc based, and let's have some mechanics around that. That would have been nice, I think, to have themed the game a bit more around the general story that they're trying to tell. But it feels like they go, cool, let's tell a bit of Leviathan, and then let's tell a bit of something else, and a bit of something else. And weirdly, I felt like 9th edition did that better, but because they probably did that in abundance with all the campaign books that they had.
And that was always the problem, though, with those campaign books in 9th edition, was they were met with a lot of frustration by the competitive scene, because they felt like they were basically being given the kind of paid DLC situation where they're like, because when Drakari came out, people were all like, well, if I want my actual full Drakari codex, I've got to buy Warzone Metallica or whatever it was.
But it was sort of good for people that didn't have the codex that came out inside alongside the Crusade books, because what often happened is, like, if you were like Guard and you were waiting ages, a campaign book came out with some bolt-on rules that kind of gave your current codex a bit more viability until the actual one came out, or alternatively, your codex is a year old and has gotten a bit, in air quotes, stale. But then another Crusade book comes out that gives you a new lease of life and a whole bunch of new rules to play. So both those two, I think it works really well. But the time when they're released simultaneously and it does feel like a bolt-on, that is particularly penalising. And I guess ultimately those, competitive people don't care about the campaign system. They don't care about the Crusade rules that were in those books. And ultimately that's sort of what they were meant to be. And they were meant to be themed army lists around the campaign that you're doing, but they just look at it from a point of view of, well, these rules are really good, so I'm just going to run them in events because I want to win. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I always feel like where the narrative element of 40K falls over all the time at the moment is where the game is at in terms of what people expect from it. Because, again, I frequent the Egham Tabletop Society, where I go and play most Tuesdays. We'll hopefully be playing this evening. And I see with the 40K players that play, because, I've been very heavily invested in AOS, obviously, but we've also got a lot of Trench Crusade there. We've got a lot of Lord of the Rings, Old World, other systems as well. And you look around, you see the people playing Lord of the Rings, and they got the nice thematic boards. You see the people playing, so you see the people playing Trench Crusade, nice narrative boards. You look at the people who are even playing Sigmar, really nice kind of like themed boards. You go to the 40K place and it's like, like the 6 tables worth of 40K. Yeah, because the thing is, I think the thing is with 40K players is the mindset of needing to play with these official layouts and everything has ran so deep now that I think people really struggle. And I think that's one of the weird problems that 40K has, is that because the way the community has taken it, it's actually really difficult for players to agree to play narrative fun games, because they don't find narrative fun. They just want both pies, because the game is so heavy-handed in the way that it does.
It's so focused on balance, right?
Yeah.
The narrative is almost inherently not balanced because it's like you've got to come up with an interesting mission or an interesting like table of terrain.
Yeah.
And traditional narrative, like really easy ones, is like attack a defender. You're storming a castle.
Yeah.
You're attacking a city. The other person is the defender. So there is inherently an asymmetrical system in place, which isn't ever going to really be balanced.
No.
And I think competitive players have been so focused on that kind of the balance mindset, like everything's got to be balanced. And probably, I don't know if it just puts people off wanting to play anything else, but I think there's a lot of it is a mindset of Games Workshop's doing it all for us. I only want to play official stuff. I don't want to make up my own rules. And I think there's a skill and an art to that has just been completely lost. It's like, and I think even within the hobby space, you get very few people wanting to make their own terrain because it's not easy and it doesn't often look that great. So I can understand the mindset of, I just want to buy some plastic terrain and build it.
Or the MDF stuff.
Or you do the MDF stuff, which probably just looks even worse. But
it does look worse, but the thing is they've gotten used to it. It's like anything, right? It's like the frog boiling in water analogy. Like, if you picked up a 40K player from 10 years ago, right, if it was us in the year 2015 and you picked us up and you brought us to this moment in time and we went to the London Grand Tournament at the end of September, we'd be looking at that and going, what is this? Like, this is awful. Like, why would anyone want this? But the thing is it's just we've arrived here over time and, but what I'm saying is I think that's one of the things that's interesting about 40K narratively is it's almost like Games Workshop's gotten to a place where they're trying to do some narrative systems, but I don't even really know who they're trying to aim them at anymore, because every time I interact with 40K players, and even myself as a 40K player, it's like I just sort of accept the fact that 40K is what it is now, and I'm never going to be able to change it. Like, I just sort of go, cool, that game is what it is, and if I want to play something with more fun narrative boards, I'll play AOS, I'll play Old Hammer style, 40K, I'll play Heresy, I'll play Trench Crusade, Necromunda. Like, if narrative and that kind of actual kind of what I would consider more traditional tabletop wargaming ideologies is what I want, I'll go elsewhere. 40K has almost become an anathema to tabletop wargaming.
I do remember a lovely guy from, I think, Norway, I think it was, or Sweden potentially. I met him at No Retreat, and I remember talking to him about 40K, and he's like, this is my competitive game. If I want to play a narrative game, I play Bolt Action. That's my kind of casual game. 40K is I'm playing it by the rules. I'm being really strict. I'm playing to win, like the competitive mindset. And that was like 3-4 years ago, and has 40K become the worst game system? Like, it used to be. I was really proud to play 40K. I really loved it. I thought it was the best game and the best setting. And ultimately, is it now not that? And it sort of feels like, yeah, maybe.
Well, the thing is, it's a very subjective statement.
Well, right? That is
true.
And
the thing is, best is personal preference. I would say, I think it is the best in so much as it is the most successful. But is it successful in the sense that it's more of a fad than it is actually a game? You know what I mean? Like, do people?
It's basically the McDonald's of gaming. It's accessible. It's everywhere. But is it the best thing out there? No, it's not the best burgers. But is it pretty good and everyone could enjoy it to an extent? Yes, I think.
Well, that's the thing with McDonald's, isn't it? McDonald's has become successful because it's consistently all right. It's always, it's never bad, it's never great, but it's always okay. It's like, it's wonderfully mediocre. And, it's very unlikely you're going to get food poisoning. It's very unlikely that you're going to break the bank. Although, to be fair, the prices do ever increasingly increase. But it's just that thing where I think like that, like 40K is interesting. It's an interesting question to pose and potentially a conversation for another time. Me personally, as someone who's been playing tabletop wargaming for years and years and years and has gotten more diverse in their kind of playing of different games, I would say that 40K isn't my favourite system right now. It It's certainly not the best system Games Workshop makes as a game, but it is still fun and enjoyable. But I think it's fun and enjoyable in the minimal viable product sense, in the sense of like, it's fun to play games with people, and I have fun playing 40k because I've completely divorced myself from caring about being good at it.
Right.
And I'm completely comfortable with going to an event and winning 2, losing 3. Like, that doesn't bother me at all anymore. Whereas,
and I think every time I do play 40k, I do enjoy it. But I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between like the theming and the narrative of the game.
Yeah.
And I've always seen myself as someone that really wants to play narrative games.
Yeah.
Mostly within 40k, but then just never happens.
Yeah, because it evaporates in contact with air. It's like one of those things where it's like the concept is appealing until you start trying to do it, and then the problem is with 40k is inevitably if you don't have those terrain layouts done properly, the game doesn't really work anymore, and the whole thing kind of goes a bit weird and wonky, and then it's not. And the problem is. You know, if to use the statement people always say is like, oh, it's Planet Bowling Ball, you know, where it's like just literally a plane. And then in that scenario, various armies will table you before you've even got a turn. Because like, I mean, I've been working on some 40k lists for an event I've signed up to do at the end of December. It's the Warhammer World Teams event. And Adam, our team captain, I was like, so I'm going to take Big Titan and some other stuff. It's just going to be a dumb list. And he's like, no, Dan, I want to win. I'm like, oh, God. All right. Well, I don't really understand how to win at 40k anymore. So let me look up some lists. And I looked at the list and I'm like, God, I don't even really understand what I'm doing with this game to be competitive anymore. I know how to have fun with it. I just don't know how to win a tournament with it anymore. Now, if you'd asked me 6 years ago, I could have rattled off hundreds of different combinations and understand the matchups. But and conversely, when it comes to Age of Sigmar, I feel much more comfortable in that reality. But yeah, when it comes to 40k, it's just like, yeah. But again, a lot of it is trying to understand the way that terrain works and how that ideology works around the trades and everything that goes around that. But anyway, to your point though, I suppose, and this I think is a good, nice opportunity to segue into what we think 11th edition is going to offer. Because I think understanding what we've just said and understanding the range and what they're doing narratively and what they're aspiring to, what are our expectations for 11th edition? Do you think, first and foremost, do you think they're going to address the terrain scenario? Do you think this is going to, or are they going to double down on it? Are they going to just basically continue even more in the direction of this is the game, possibly. So says us?
I mean, I sort of feel like for years there's been, or at least in the last year, there's been a general rumour of, oh yeah, Games Workshop's going to do their own like sort of flat pack terrain or prescribed terrain packs, whether that's plastic or MDF.
But they already, well, I mean, they don't sell the kits, but they do prescribe terrain layouts in
they do preset
companions.
They do preset terrain layouts, and in Kill Team starter set, the in the new one that's coming out and the one that currently exists, they do printed, quite nice-ish looking but very basic MDF terrain, which ultimately could be done to be compatible with their competitive sort of terrain layouts.
Yeah.
It's just a couple of extra more walls and maybe somehow, a flooring to get a second level in maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's nicely printed with that kind of same design as the Kill Team one. I imagine that... I would sort of hate it personally, but I imagine tournament people would love it because
of course they would.
It is one step up from plain brown MDF.
Yeah.
It doesn't need painting. It's already got pre-printed design on it. Yeah. As a tournament organizer, I imagine that would be fantastic. So I could imagine they do that. Personally, I think my soul would die a little bit inside because it just means most people, probably because of the price of it, would just go down that route of, I'll just get this terrain. I sort of hope at the very least that it's still compatible with existing plastic terrain kits, because I think ultimately that is like the
I don't think it will be. I think they will. I think it's highly probable. So my first big prediction for 11th edition is that they ship it with MDF terrain in the box.
Oh no!
I think they'll do it.
No. Here's the thing. Part of me thinks they don't because they haven't pretty much put terrain in any of their kind of 40k edition starter sets in a long time.
In a long time, yeah.
why? Because the proposition of those, why you buy those boxes are because they're great value deals for buying Space Marines and whatever the other army is. It's like so much cheaper. You're almost stupid to not buy them. That's why you do it, even though every year I try and resist and then end up buying the odd bit here.
Yeah, I know.
And I just go to the point where I should have just bought the box in the end.
Yeah, I had the exact same problem with Leviathan.
Because the book is like 30 quid. And then if you buy one or two Space Marine things, ultimately it ends up being almost the price.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight it this year. I'm just going to succumb to my. Yeah.
I mean, I got the Indomitus one. I didn't get Leviathan, but I ended up buying a few bits here and there. But then I've not built any of that stuff so far. It's like I have too much Space Marine stuff as it is before needing another box of stuff. So I guess okay. So you think terrain's going to be in the set?
So my prediction is. So first things first, I think they are going to take a massive page out of Age of Sigmar and develop Combat Patrol to be a really good standalone game. So I think Combat Patrol will be its own very, very good game in the same way that Spearhead is its own very, very good game.
Well, I mean, Combat Patrol already is its own game.
No, but it's terrible. It's so poorly.
But it's just because it's not good.
It's not good. They haven't really thought about anything in terms of like balancing it. The design of it's been pretty poor. I think Combat Patrol needs to be its own thing, because I think the thing is, right, is what you can say about the Age of Sigmar box set is that the Age of Sigmar box set was a really, really amazing proposition because of the fact that basically it gave you a game in a box, which is the first time they've done that in ages.
Like, has very little terrain that you need for it,
but that was plastic terrain done with a cardboard board. Because, by the way, I'm not even saying they may even do MDF. Maybe they bring back cardboard terrain.
True.
Because if all you need is flat L's, as in like just L shapes that just go up, you can just give me some push out cardboard and get that done.
That's true. But part of me would almost rather see Combat Patrol tie in with boarding actions. So it's like, cool, you can get the boarding actions train, which I know is not the cheapest.
No, not at all.
But it does, the size of that game works, I think, a lot better. And it's like, cool, it's just a thing. The only downside is Combat Patrol doesn't necessarily make it automatically compatible with boarding actions, because boarding actions is like nothing that flies, no jump packs, no jet bikes, stuff like that, whereas a lot of Combat Patrol does have stuff like that in, so it maybe isn't 100% compatible. But if you're going down that route, it's like you could also make not cardboard, but the printed MDF.
Well, I think cardboard's probably not bad. But this is the thing, right? So this is how I look at it. You get a box of minis, and in that box of minis is all your stuff, and maybe it's Combat Patrol plus extras, because that's kind of what Scaventide was. It was basically Spearhead plus extras.
Yes, yeah.
So you do that, and then you sell it with the complete terrain stuff that comes in it, which will just be the cardboard stuff, and then you do that as well with your ultimate starter box. It's just the two Combat Patrols and this cardboard or MDF terrain, and then you just sell an additional box, which is the upscale map pack, or whatever you want to call it. I can't think of a good name for it right now, but you buy like the map pack, and the map pack just basically expands your 1,000-point board size to a 2,000-point board size, so it's just double the stuff you get in that box. Or
with,
if
with
you
a
and your
bunch of pre-made objectives, like in Age of Sigmar.
Oh yeah, or you can have objective markers that just go down on the table or whatever. But you print them on the table. I don't think you need to do that.
I meant like the current General's Handbook, where you get the the pie plate objective markers.
And I think that's the thing, though, right? It's like, it literally, if out of the box you get a cardboard board, and you get the card terrain, we'll say it is in this sense, and in there you get your two big L's and your couple little L's, and it's all just ruins, and it's super boring. But ultimately, it's what people like, and it's a solution in a box then. And then all you have to do is say, right, if you and a buddy buy two of these box sets, you're ready to go, just smush them together. If you buy it yourself, just also then buy this expansion, which is just the set again. and then you're done. And it's literally like, it's a 200 quid box, or probably by GW pricing at that point, a 210 quid box, maybe closer to 215. But then you buy like a 35, 40, 50 quid upgrade with the extra cardboard bits. And then bam, out of the gate, you've got a 2,000 point map that is completely done. And you're literally ready. Everyone who plays 40k, who buys those box sets, which is most 40k players, have tournament standard terrain setups ready to go, and everything is standardized. Because this is the thing, like I've always said this thing. It's like at the end of the day, when you're looking at trying to kind of like promote anything, it's like basically like perception is reality, basically, that kind of statement where it's like what actually happened is irrelevant. What people think happened is what matters, right? And I think this is the problem with 40k now. It's gone so far in this direction. I don't think they can fight it anymore. I think they do just need to turn it into what it is and just accept their fate, because what they are is actually quite profitable. So just give people what they think they want, which is just really, really ugly cardboard terrain that does the job, but basically means that everyone is playing to the same standard, and then everyone's happy because they're going, ooh, I've got this really expensive chess type game and I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't see them putting all of that terrain in the main box, because to me it's like it would make more sense just to sell that on its own.
Yeah, but how many cardboard L's can you put in there? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like the L shapes, like really, for 1,000 point board, you need wherever like half the amount of terrain is for a tournament layout in the world today. So a tournament layout, I'm just going to pull up the Warhammer community.
There's probably like 5 pieces aside.
Maybe in the big ones, but I feel like typically, if I remember correctly. So yeah, so if you look at like tournament standard layouts, they have in half the board, Phil, half the board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas of terrain, of which 2 of them are large L's, 1 of them is a U shape, 1 of them is a small L, and the other ones are just small bits. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 small bits. In fact, sorry, no, and then 3 big L's and 1 U shape. You could totally print that on a piece of cardboard with no hassle.
No, probably.
And it doesn't even need to be tall, because people just have given up on verticality in the game. Like, you don't need to create like vertical layers to it, because actually I think 40k would work better if you did away with verticality and just basically make it that these walls are only here for obscuring purposes. There is no verticality to this game. You cannot go up anymore because again, the verticality is a hangover of when this used to be a war game, but it's not a war game anymore. It's an elaborate competitive board game, so it just needs to stop trying to pretend to be anything else.
Maybe. I
mean, mate, I'm not happy about it. I'm just saying that's where it's gone.
No, well, I can see your point, but part of me is like, that box set will sell on its own with no terrain in, with just the miniatures. So why bother including that in there? Unless they're trying to make it some kind of value proposition. Well, I mean, it already is a value proposition. Unless they're trying to gear it at young kids or people that have never played the game before. And that's not what those boxes tend to be, because there's a difference between a launch box, which tends to be aimed at established gamers, because there's no dice and there's no rulers in there or anything like that. It's the starter sets that you get in the 3 different sizes, which I think Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games did an interesting debate on his Industry Hour one time, where he was like, there's 3 versions, but really the middle one is there just to look bad, so you go for the cheapest one or you go for the most expensive one. The middle one there is just to go, well, but for 10 quid more or whatever it is, you can buy the bigger one. It's just an upsell one, basically. It was like an interesting thing, like the theory that he was going on about it.
I don't disagree with him, though. I think he's right. I mean, again, it's also the fact that they try and sell the half the contents of it, i.e. the Space Marine part of it, is a combat patrol, and that combat patrol is £100, whereas the Ultimate box set is 110 or
yes,
something. It's like,
something,
what?
yeah,
Like,
ridiculous. I remember we were in Warhammer World looking at the prices, and it's
Yeah.
like, but this one's cheaper by a significant
And that's how
amount.
you justify
Even if
buying
you
it.
bought in even if you had to buy the extra, like librarian to make it match up with the combat patrol, it was still way cheaper.
But again, to your point though, if you buy the Ultimate box set today, it has that terrain. And
it does have terrain in.
Yeah. And the reason why I think they'll chuck it into the main big FOMO box is just because I think they'll want to enter into a world where everything is standardized. Because there is an intrinsic benefit to the standardization, which is you have a community that are basically playing to the same set of expectations, which increases 40K's viability as a pick up and play product, right? Because if you're playing 40K and you are trying to get a game in with a stranger, again, reducing that friction point one other way. So as every one of your players now, most of your players now have access to a standardized terrain layout. It just basically means that everyone's sort of on the same page, which everyone wants to be, because that's what actually has probably grown 40K more than anything. Obviously the setting and all that stuff is great. But the fact that you can just get a game in and everyone kind of accepts that we're always moving with the living rule book, as it were. We're always upgraded to the latest thing. Like, I've never, ever had a conversation with a random person who wants to play 40K about what edition we're playing or what kind of terrain we're using, because everyone just goes, oh yeah, we're going to play default 40K. Yeah. And if you turn up and say, oh, I was hoping that we could play this obscure mission deck, or I was thinking maybe we could do this, they're like, literally like, no, I've already set up the board. We're going to use the ETC layout, and I'm practicing for a tournament, and it's always the same.
Well,
thing.
I think it is that concept, and we fall foul to that as well. Like, often when we're meeting up to have a game, or historically it used to be, well, we're having a practice game ahead of going to an event, which was a Games Workshop Warhammer World event, which tended to mean it was match play using the deck of cards or using whichever was the current rules at the time. So it's like we never got to sort of just have fun and go, let's do a narrative game. I mean, sometimes we did, but it was a lot of a rarity in comparison to I think nowadays less so, because we're just not doing 40K events in the same way we were in sort of like, let's say, 8th edition. I think. Okay, so in the box set, what Space Marines do you think we get?
They just go for the low-hanging fruit, right? So it's going to be a tactical squad.
That's what I was going to suggest.
And I think that tactical squad is going to incorporate multiple armor types and is going to be the death knell of the intercessor.
Oh, don't say that.
No,
I was literally explaining to you before we recorded that I have 3 painted intercessor squads and another one which was built as a veteran intercessors that I just have no encouragement to actually get around to paint, because it's like I already have too many intercessor squads, because I built them in 8th edition when there were 3 different types of bolters, and they all did different things in the game, and there was an incentive, not that you had to do it, but there was an incentive to play it WYSIWYG, because, to be fair, the standard bolt rifle and the Stalker basically looked the same, bar a scope, pretty much. But the auto bolter looked very different because the magazine size was quite noticeable. I
felt like the Stalker also had an ever so slightly longer rifle, a stock or whatever it's called. Magazine.
Yes, I think it was.
Or it had a shorter magazine.
I think
one of them had longer, one of them short.
I think one of them might have been squarer and the other was
curved.
Right, I think. But then, I'm not sure they were completely consistent on that.
But the scope was definitely the main point.
A slightly longer one as well. Because you can get a standard scope on the normal one, but it's just smaller, I think.
And then the auto one had the kind of big drum.
The drum magazine,
And then no scope.
Yes, that was correct. And likewise, the plasma all had different variations. So would they do? I'd sort of hate it if they do another time.
But I think the way they'll do it is they'll go, because the thing is, what they're probably saying to themselves is this Space Marine range has become a bit mad, and we're going to just kind of create a tactical squad. So, and their excuse will be, well, yeah, but you can just take the stuff you've got and just smush it into the squad. So, obviously you're going to have the heavy intercessor with the heavy weapon. You're going to have the, very similar to like how they've just done the kill team.
I was going to say the kill team one. I noticed they're definitely sticking with this concept of heavy weapons are carried by Gravis armor because of the frag cannon. My one discrepancy with that is surely the company command squad has a heavy
and Stone
bolter.
Guard.
Oh, I understand. And they're just regular dudes.
They're just regular dudes.
They've broken their own rules.
Well, I think the thing is maybe they don't have to abide by that. And maybe it won't be the death nail of the intercessor, but I feel like it will be. I feel like that right now, I think for the health of the game and the health of the range, because there's the other thing as well. And I mean, we should probably talk about it in its own thing in a moment, but it's what we're going to lose in 11th edition that I'm really interested in. Because
surely we've lost most things, well, with the exception of vehicles, right? We've had the big cull of a lot of rangers already.
So I think 11th edition will be the death knell on aircraft. I think they're gone. I think all flyers are gone. Anything that is a flyer is dead.
Even the Deathwatch one.
Even the Deathwatch one, yeah. Especially the Deathwatch one. I think they're gone.
Do you know why? Because I bought one.
Because you bought one,
Because everything...
And I've bought, every other flyer going, so yeah.
Everything I own turns to Legends it will be a future title for a podcast discussion, because it's mad how true that is.
Mate, in your case, it really is. But that's to do with your kind of, hipster purchasing habits. You go for the odd stuff. But look, my point is that I don't think they're in a world where they can get rid of super heavies or Titanic things, although I think they should. I know there's a controversial take. I own an Imperial Knight army. I think it should go.
I think Knights would be too popular. I could see the point about things like Baneblades, because they're sort of too big for the game now, especially when we're just talking about the terrain layouts and stuff. Like, they just don't fit on the board.
No.
The map's shrinking hasn't helped that either.
No, not at all.
Definitely.
And then the size of the armies going up has really made it crazy as well. The amount of minis you have to get.
But in a way, that's more of an incentive to have super heavies, because it sort of reduces the model count.
Yeah, but this is my thing, is genuinely, I think, and I hate saying it because I don't want it to go, but I think for the good of the game, they should go. Or they should be reduced to being very singular things. So it's like Imperial Knights, Grey Knights, Death Watch, all go into the Imperial agents, and they are only ally units that you can only take one of. Here's my thing. I don't like saying it, but I'm just sort of thinking about what is, in my opinion, what would be good for the game and help it along.
I don't think Grey Knights need to do that. Death Watch makes more sense out of the...
Well, they have done it. They're about to do it.
They ultimately...
Death Watch are done. If any of you are out there buying Death Watch to use that index,
well, here's the thing. The current Kill Team box has sold out, and I bet it hasn't sold out because people love Kill Team.
No,
it hasn't sold out because people love Necrons. It hasn't sold out because people love the terrain. It's sold out because Space Marine players want that Death Watch Kill Team, and they're mostly probably be Death Watch players already that have Death Watch armies. So the fact that they're effectively flogging you a ridiculously, was it £150 box to make you buy Deathwatch Marines, that then they're saying, yeah, but there's no Deathwatch Army guys next edition.
Yeah.
It probably infuriate people more than they did when they did it this edition.
Yeah.
Because this edition, they weren't giving you new Marines. You were already running on legacy stuff, plus your own Primaris conversions.
Yeah.
Whereas now they've gone, oh yeah, here's some new Primaris Deathwatch.
Yeah.
No codex for you.
Yeah.
That's more of a kick to the teeth, I think.
Well, I just think it's where it's going. And look, here's the thing, right? The aircraft going, I'm convinced is happening. They have to go. They make no sense. They make no sense in the game whatsoever.
I agree with you, although it's disappointing. Some of those flyers are relatively new, like the Archaeothopter for AdMech was.
Yeah,
that's probably a good 3 years old now or so. But that's in the scheme of 40K is not ancient.
No, not at all. But that's the newest one they've done for sure, the Archaeothopter. But then other than that,
because obviously Votan, which is a new range, has
no fly.
Has got no flyers. Obviously, it's got things on Gravis, which is, you could argue it's flying, but it's not a flyer.
Yeah, but again, you look at Emperor's Children, you look at World Eaters, all these new ranges don't have flyers in them. Now, would they lend themselves to flyers anyway? Maybe not, but they haven't got them.
No, true.
But,
I could see that going. What do you think about Rhinos and Land Raiders? Going or being re-sculpted, like redone?
The Land Raider will get a new sculpt, and the Rhino will go.
Out of the two, I know the Land Raider's more iconic.
Yeah.
But the Land Raider has the Repulsor, which is a perfectly good replacement. I also
think the Repulsor could go.
That's grown on me, so I really like that.
I think
whereas the Impulsor is a terrible replacement for the Rhino.
Oh, I agree.
Because the Rhino is still more iconic, whereas I would say the Land Raider is slightly more iconic than the Repulsor, but the Repulsor basically looks like a floating Land Raider.
I mean, it might make sense for them just to change it to, as a data sheet, just call it heavy troop transport, light troop transport, and that can be represented by either of these miniatures. And that's it. And they have the same rules, and that's the thing. I know people hate it because we come from a world where people used to represent stuff on them. And this game used to be a hobby tabletop game where people used to express their individuality and creativity through what they were building. But it just isn't that anymore. And this is the thing, I agree that it sucks, but I'm saying, it just makes sense now. I've said it for ages, and I believe it adamantly. Every unit has a melee profile and a range profile, and it doesn't matter what's on it. It just has those profiles. And it doesn't matter if everyone in the unit has different guns, because that's just accounted in an an amalgamated score, i.e., this unit has this range profile and this melee profile.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. That's basically the last edition of Armageddon that they did. Sorry, not Armageddon, Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And it's not too dissimilar from Legions Imperialis.
And it's not too dissimilar, really, from what they do with Sigmar as well, though.
True. Although, weirdly, they've started to do more variations on that.
Slightly. They've started to introduce the idea of different units with different war gear items, but I'm asserting that is more of a necessity to eke out more.
Let's make this one kit technically be two, but via the older logic, it was actually amalgamated into one. They're starting to stretch things a bit there.
But I think that's the thing. I think flyers go. And then I think when you look at Marines, I think maybe they don't get rid of intercessors, but when you look at Primarchs ranges from the years before, you have to start saying to yourself, what is going? I think aggressors are on the chopping block. I think Hellblasters are on the chopping block.
Oh God, please no! This is my army. This is all I have. But again, as I was saying, I'm destined to have a defunct, constantly recycled armies. Here's the thing. Aggressors, I think, look, they're not great sculpts. I don't mind them going. Hellblasters, I'd love to. Personally, I would actually get rid of tactical squads. Who cares about tactical squads anymore?
No, I agree. They should just go.
Fogies like us that played 7th edition. If you have not played, and a lot of people haven't played 7th edition. They've gone on board from 8th and 9th. Tactical squads are a thing of myth and legend to those people.
I agree.
So a tactical squad, for me, has a lot of nostalgia and harks back to sort of 2nd, 3rd edition of the game. For most people, it's sort of meaningless. And it's I think it feels like it's a very strong visual, IP element to a Space Marine. But I think for most people nowadays, it's a nothing. It's meaningless to a lot of people. So I would rather they just get rid of it rather than try to shoehorn in Primaris into a tactical squad. Or if they did it, they shouldn't get rid of Incest and Hellblasters. They should just all be viable choices. And a tactical squad is literally that. It is a tactical squad. So it's basically intercessors with a couple of special weapons and heavy weapons thrown into the mix. And that's sort of the point of it.
Yeah, but and just to sort of say as well, because I feel like I should probably just finish, or at least try and wrap a bow around what I was saying before in terms of the idea that data sheets just become these all incorporating things, especially within Space Marines. I accept that obviously people will hear that kind of stuff and be annoyed about it. And I'm not saying obviously that I want any of this to happen. I'm just saying if I was going through the logical exercise of trying to deal with Space Marines specifically right now, how do I kind of come up with a solution that I would assert would give people the best of both worlds, but inevitably end up upsetting everybody. That's why I think
they have done it to an extent. I remember last edition, the Repulsor had 50 different weapon options.
Yeah. Now it's just got one.
You had storm bolters or frag launchers, and now it's just called a defensive array.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what weapon version you choose, it's the same thing, and it just does a fixed number of shots. And it's got a profile. So I could see things being dumbed down in that way.
I think that's where they'll go with everything, though. I think going forwards, it's just a sensible way of dealing with it, because the problem is that right now, it's crazy. I mean, they need to. I mean, I suppose. We're getting off on well, let's just finish what we think is in that Space Marine side of the box, and then we can talk about what we think they're going to change from a rules perspective. I think Tactical Squad, unfortunately, will come in, and that could herald the reduction of some other stuff. I think Assault Terminators are the easy win because they haven't got them yet. So
if they don't come out beforehand.
Yeah, they don't come out beforehand. Yeah. And I think the Devastator Squad is almost inevitable at this point, right? So,
like a proper classic. Well, surely they should throw in a Rhino or something.
Maybe.
Do a proper classic era. But then part of me is the Devastator Squad, the Tactical Squad, they should get rid of those, and then I'm convinced there's scope for that existing as its own edition of the game, where it is sort of pre-Indomitus, or that becomes the Scouring era of Heresy, with the Mark 7s moving over to Heresy, basically.
Well, I just think that's the thing, and the reason why I think the Tactical Squad is the play is because if it consists of stuff that comes from other boxes, they just sort of go, well, you had Hellblasters, and you have Intercessors, and you have this, and you have that, but now it all just smushes together, and it just reduces our need, and also it means.
But then why would you buy it if you've already got all of those models? Because I could just make the squad.
You wouldn't, but then who's been buying Intercessors and Hellblasters and that stuff lately anyway? You know what I mean?
I think once you've got them, you don't need to. So why? Here's the thing: Games Workshop hate redoing units that already exist. They would much rather give you a brand new unit that is similar enough to be like that thing, but give it a new name.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's you can wipe out a load of the range, and because this is their biggest problem all the time with those guys, is it's managing warehouse space, managing product ranges. When you look at things like Space Marines right now, essentially anything that is firstborn still will be subject to a Primarchs upgrade. So Vanguard Veterans, Devastator Squads, Tactical Squads, Assault Terminators, right? That's it now, right? Once they've done those, it's done at that point. And then the only other stuff they've got as a hangover are Predators, Vindicators, Land Raiders, Rhinos, Razorbacks, Whirlwinds.
Have we had Vanguard?
We haven't had Vanguard. Did I say Vanguard? I said Vanguard at some point. We've had Sternguard. We haven't had Vanguard. But anyway, so those are your hangover bits. But then it's that situation where it's the range is massive, and there's a lot of Primarch stuff that no one cares about. Let's be honest with ourselves. Very few people have Skyhammer bunkers at this point. Very few people have Reavers. Very few people.
Reavers are cool, though.
They're cool, but no one's been playing them. And then it's and then very few people have, I don't even know what it's called, but the Tech Marine with a servo turret,
Yeah, or I'm trying to remember the name of it, Desolation Marines.
Exactly.
They should just
get rid of them.
Because they were a bad idea that just didn't work. And things like Centurions, I would put in that category.
Oh, God, Centurions have to go.
Part of me was but there's so many things that they could do that people want. It's they should go, cool, you should have an all Phobos army and all just tactical armor and tacticus, and then an all Gravis armies. But it's cool, I want a Gravis lieutenant, I want a Gravis chaplain,
oh God, I want
Gravis librarian.
Well. Yeah.
Do those things so people can sort of complete those armies with those model ranges. That is to me almost that sort of heresy proves that people will happily buy just different versions of the same thing in different marks of armor. But instead of it being, Mark 2 to 6, it's Phobos, Tacticus, Gravis. and you just do one of everything and repeat them. Now, you don't need to have like Hellblasters and Gravis armor, sure, but you have sort of niche units for all of them.
Yeah.
And characters should have equivalents in all of them.
I mean, I think Centurions should go because I just don't really understand I never understood the point of them when they first came out, right? And and when I'm saying stuff like, "Oh, get rid of the Skyfall hammer bunker thing and get rid of the Gazer," I don't really want them to do that.
Terrain has sort of they went for a phase of like 9th edition. It felt like every faction was getting its own custom terrain piece.
8th and 10th was when they started doing that,
because Elder got the Web Gate, which I think they've just brought back on Made to Order.
Yeah.
The Guard last edition got the new and improved Aegis defense line, which is
one of the few armies that still has rules for their terrain feature.
Like Tau is another one that's always had it, I think, and that's a kit that always seems to be available.
The old tidal wave wall thing.
Yeah, tidal. But then, for others, they just don't either seem to sell or no one ever wants them. And they really seem to flip-flop to know whether to have them in the game or not.
Yeah.
And it's just like, just pick one.
Yeah.
It's like, either everyone should get it, like in AOS, they seem to be going,
everyone gets it in AOS that they can figure out a consistent idea and
then stick with it for ages.
Yeah.
And much like maybe they need to do what they did in AOS, which has its pros and cons. Is like, you get terrain feature, you get it for free.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to buy one, which is a cost, which is the con. But it feels like, well, there's no reason to not take it in my army because it will benefit it in some way. I can put it on the tabletop.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost me any points. So there's no downside really of, taking it ultimately. But then that would totally mess up the train layout. So I can see why especially when they're so big.
And that's why I think that stuff just goes. And again, I'm not, like at the end of the day, I bought Centurions back in the day. I own some still. Obviously I've made that purchase. I'd love to be able to still use them, but I haven't been using them. I think this is the thing. It's like, the Space Marine range is really interesting, but I think it makes sense that they're just going to either do some Primarchs variants of the stuff that was, or just get rid of more stuff. The Flyers going, I think, is an inevitability because I just don't know where they belong anymore in the game. And then any of the terrain stuff going makes sense as well. I think that goes.
I could see a lot of old vehicles going and either getting re-sculpts or just disappearing from the game. I'm personally convinced that the Lehman Russ is just going to go for 40k, as iconic as it is. It's got a Heresy equivalent that is a like-for-like sculpt. Why would they do a 40k new sculpt that looks exactly the same?
Yeah.
The Rogul Dawn feels like they're pushing that so hard to be the replacement. The aesthetic and style of it is so curved and round. It matches the Sentinel. That's the new kit.
Yeah.
But I don't think they could do a Lehman Russ that looked like the Rogul Dawn. And it would,
But I think the only other, sorry to cut you off on that one, just to sort of,
sure.
I think the only other unit I think is guaranteed done for Space Marines is the Suppressor Squad as well, just to say. But anyway.
Well, because it hasn't really been available as its own standalone thing. And that's another thing that does bug me, and it has with AOS as well, that Games Workshop constantly produce kits that are on mixed sprues that go into launch boxes and then don't sell them in their own right. So, I think, but then sometimes like you get the odd sprue that's on its own, and it's like you got the bikes for Space Marines, and there was a trend of like, cool, the launch boxes are easy build versions, and then we also do a more detailed kit down the line that's a standalone box that has more configurable options. And the suppressors and the bikes are just two that have just had that same old sculpt. With the new jet bike that we're getting for the Khan for White Scars, I would much rather they get rid of the standard wheeled bikes and just go all jet bikes, because I think they all look cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, but in terms of what comes in the box for Marines, I think you'll get a character. That character will probably be, it'd be cool if it was an aggressor chaplain. That'd be wicked. Or and actually they leaned more into the Gravis style stuff. We'll see. But I think
I feel like they fleshed out the Terminators quite. You've got like your librarian, your chaplain.
Oh yeah, the Terminator's got the full the full
Did you have
support.
lieutenant? I don't think
They didn't get a lieutenant, but there's never really been like Terminator lieutenant. Well, there has been a Terminator lieutenant in the Dark Angels for a while, but they've never really dealt with that. But there should be a Terminator lieutenant.
I would happily, weirdly, I feel like there needs to be more ranks in 40K. Sorry, in Space Marines. Like you got lieutenant and you got captain, and then you got sergeant, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in between.
Well, there used to be squad commanders, didn't there? Like there was
you got your squad leader,
yeah.
So when you combat squadded, so you split your 10-man squad into a 5-man squad, there was a squad leader for them. So I always painted those up on my Minotaur, so I always denoted it with a stripe down the helmet, so I had them. But I sort of feel like there needs to be like more like generic field commanders, artillery bombardment type people that could exist within the Space Marine range.
But that's the thing though nowadays, isn't it? With or what Space Marines were, it's the thing is once you achieve the rank of Space Marine, once you're basically out of scout status and you are a battle brother, the way that they were before was that they were, because this is I had this conversation before where I was talking about this, where actually I felt like this was a really interesting opportunity for GW to form a division between Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, because firstborn Space Marines were all just genetic lunatics that happened to be incredibly good at killing things. So the idea is that they weren't a military force, they weren't soldiers, they were warriors, they were like a really well drilled brotherhood of psychos that would just go out clad in tank armor and just smash everything to pieces with their explosive ammunition and their incredibly powerful weapons bulked up by their immense strength. And that was always the thing with them, right? Like, yes, they were proficient in hand-to-hand combat and guns and all the rest of it, but the idea was that they were just super hardcore fighting machines. And that was kind of reminiscent in the way that the range used to be depicted, because they were all just this not uniform, but they were all just utilitarian in their function. They were all just crazy guys in armor that were just going to go out and kill things. Whereas now with Primarchs, they become more military-esque or more kind of specialized. They've got all sorts of scopes and all sorts of knives and all sorts of gear.
Tactical.
Yeah, they look like they're going to actually be strategic and think, ooh, infiltrating enemy territory and doing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they have that kind of modern military aesthetic and theming.
Which is where the Chaos Space Marines can potentially incorporate more of just a more kind of brutalist, more kind of like, that aspect of it. But my point is, I suppose, when it comes to, the Marine stuff, is I just think... Yeah, long story short, when it comes to like what they do with it, I think they need to just... They'll do some Space Marine stuff and they'll be fine.
Because they did so the chaplain sort of ranks got fleshed out with the Judicia.
Sorry, that was what we were talking about, the rank. Sorry, I literally lost my train of thought. It was probably pretty obvious to people.
So they did the Judicia for as an extra sort of chaplain.
Yeah.
Like they could do so sort of more. I had a mad idea, like a junior squad of librarians. So it's like novitiates. So they're all psychic. They're all, doing like fireballs and stuff with their hands. But they're sort of like low-rank librarians. I can almost imagine like a completely new squad like that for Space Marines, as sort of mad as that would be.
Yeah. And again, sorry, because I remember when my train of thought was there. That's why I felt like Space Marines of old didn't really need super duper duper rankings, because they were all basically, you were all basically the same unless you were in charge of a squad. And then at that point, it was like, if you were in charge of a squad, one day maybe you were in charge of a company, and if you were in charge of the company, maybe one day you were in charge of the chapter, and that was basically the way it went.
Because they did it, so they had things like, depending on which company you're in charge of, you had like the Master of the Vox and Master of Ordnance and stuff like that. But I almost feel like they could be some, not necessarily, because you've obviously got to keep those as they are, but like having a Ordnance character that's like maybe like a different variation of a tech marine that's in charge of the off-battle artillery barrage, and that's your in-game ability. A bit like how you had the ordnance guys in the guard army and stuff like that. But it feels like those, I don't know, that's how you can sort of add more characters to an already bloated army. And the problem with Space Marines is you have the army's too big. It's got too many models, it's bloated, but we also now need to create more Space Marines to make people want to buy new stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool, are you doing a range rotation? Are you just adding more stuff in? Like, what do you do? And that's the constant dilemma. And we've seen that now with Stormcast, where they've gone, well, we're redoing a bunch of the old ranges that are less than 10 years old.
Yeah. That was the crazy thing with the Stormcast stuff, though, wasn't it? It's like we're getting rid of these guys with swords and shields and replacing them with guys with swords and shields, and you're like, brilliant, well done, guys. But I think that at least with Space Marines, they've got a little bit more kind of opportunity to kind of exploit like the fluff element of it. The thing I will say is I have no idea what they're going to do with the orc side of it. If orcs are actually the thing, no idea what they're going to do with that.
Well, it's been a while since we've had like the orc range refresh. I think there's like a couple of units that still need to be done. Like because I quite liked I'm trying to remember the name of them, the sort of savage-esque orcs that they did, that were the beast snaggers.
The beast snaggers, yeah.
They basically did bigger boys, and I can imagine them leaning. Well, they were sort of like better sculpts of the regular guys.
But they've done a new squad of boys since, though, haven't they?
No, that's true. So are they going to like focus on a different, because they did that weird thing where it's like they weren't the beast snaggers were like a new tribe, but done in a way where they weren't one of the main factions and could sort of
the way
across
they did
all of them.
Was really underwhelming.
But they could just be like, cool, we're going to take one of the major clans and we're just going to do all of them, and it's going to be like sort of little sub factions.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like AOS does that a bit more, where it's like, cool, we're going to take goblins and we're going to go, cool, for that army, we're going to do all the ones riding on wolves and in chariots, and that's his own thing.
Yeah.
And you can have an army of just those if you want, or you can have them alongside a much wider goblin army.
Yeah.
And that also works. And then you got your trolls, and you can have just an army of trolls, or you can include them with your goblins or giant spiders or whatever. Like they sort of compartmentalize them a bit better. And I think you've seen that with Guard and Cadian now. Like, you've got these two quite distinct and playable as their own separate factions under the umbrella of Guard, but you could also combine them together to like have this mixed army.
Where I feel like AOS gets away with that, though, is because the game sizes or the army sizes are so much smaller.
Yeah.
And that's where they get away with it, because it's like, cool, we've given you 6 new kits for wolf goblins, and it's like, cool, well, I'll take 2 units of the baseline troop type guys, like the simple gobos on wolves. I'll take 1 unit of the elite wolfy guys. Then I'll take a couple of units of the chariot and 1 of the big war machine, and then the character and another character. I'm like, cool, I'm done. Whereas in 40k, you do all of that and you go, cool, I still need to find another 1,200 points to put in this army. And I think that's always where the issue arises with 40k, is like the ranges. I mean, again, speaking about having to build like an Elder army at the moment, as I start looking at it, I'm like, good Lord, like once you start actually putting all this stuff in it, you're like, flipping heck, I need 10 Swooping Hawks, 10 Warp Spiders, 15 Fire Dragons, 15 Dark Reapers. And you're like, literally at this point, you're going, how many points is that? 900. Like, what? And how much money is that? Oh my God. And it's just it's a crazy kind of situation they're in. And that's something, I suppose, not wanting to speculate on what the orcs could be, because God knows, they could come along and go, here's our Cruel Boys equivalent to orcs, where it's more of the kind of, you know,
sneaky,
sneaky ones. But I think, in terms of my kind of key predictions of the box set, as I said already, I think we'll get this really bland L-shaped terrain stuff in the box. I think we'll see them introduce the Space Marine stuff they haven't done yet. I think rules-wise, this is, I suppose, a really big topic, and we've already been talking for nearly 2 hours, so probably want to sort of gauge this carefully. But I think my prediction is that this will be iterative and that we're not going to see them wipe it out entirely. And I'm trying to think of how they could do this relatively painlessly, but I think they need to overhaul. If I was looking at the game right now and thinking about what I need to change, I would very heavily focus on all the weapon profiles and the amount of rolls that go into all of them. So if we take range specifically, the sequence of determining a ranged attack is as such, and we'll just assert that this ranged weapon has D6 shots, and the victim of this shot has feel no pain, because it's the most extreme example, right? You go, cool. My model is within 30 inches. That parameter is correct. Good. I'm eligible to shoot. How many shots do I have? D6. Fabulous. I roll a dice. Ooh, I've rolled a 4. Pick up 4 dice. These 4 shots hit on 4s. I roll them. I get 2 hits. I get to re-roll those shots. Good. Pick up the 2 remainder. Roll them. I now have 3 hits. Are any of those hits 6s? Yes. Good news. I'm sustained hits 1. Fabulous. Now, I've now rolled 1 6 out of all that. I've now got 4 hits. Yay! Next, wounds. How tough are you? I am strength 6. I am toughness 4, but I'm -1 to be wounded. Okay, so I wound you on a 4. Yes, that's correct. Good. Great. I've rolled to wound. I've wounded 3 times out of 4. Yay! Now you roll a save. Cool. I'm -2. I'm in cover. I ignore cover. Okay, great. I roll a bunch of saves. How much damage have you done with the 2 unsaved wounds? Ooh, they're D3 damage each. Cool. We'll have to do these one at a time because I'm feel no pain 5. Okay, the first one is 2. It's mental. It's absolutely mental how many steps that is. For me, either we need to massively overhaul many parts of that process, or my easiest win is get rid of rolling to hit. Just get rid of it. Everything is, if it's in range, you get hit that many times, and just do it that way. And then at least then I've removed a step, like just roll a wound and then roll to save. It would be fine, in my opinion. Just be like, everyone's a marksman in this universe, and we're just going to denote the amount of power of the weapons by the amount of shots.
I think I would just rather remove all things like rerolls.
Oh God, wouldn't that be great? Get rid of them.
Plus and minuses to hit into wound or something like that. So you are streamlining it. But I think here's the thing: the core principle of rolling to hit, rolling to wound, rolling to save has existed pretty much since the first edition.
Yeah,
and it's and that has stood the test of time. To me, is the foundational principle of 40K. AOS doesn't quite do it in the exact same way. You do still have a wound roll, but it's not a comparative chain of strength and a toughness. It's just whatever it says on your profile, which 40K could do. Personally, I don't like it because it is not really reflective of what you're doing versus what you're fighting against. I like that there's a nuance in that. I wouldn't like to see them get rid of those steps, basically. But I think you could streamline those steps by getting rid of all the stuff around it, basically.
Yeah, because I think that's the complexity of it, right? And again, I was probably giving a very worst case scenario there, but this is the problem with it, right? And it happens all the time. And then you add in the layered nuance of, yes, but this is one gun. Now I've got this type of gun, and this type of gun, and this type of gun.
The problem, I think, of units with multiple guns is a real detriment to the game. And you see that in AOS as well, but I think in this edition of AOS they've streamlined it, so it's it's pretty much just a bunch of dice rolls with a really generic name, and 40K has gone down that route to an extent, but it made sense when it was cool. I've got a squad that maybe has a heavy bolter, maybe it has a specialist weapon, but it probably has one of those things in there. But nowadays it tends to be a lot of units get overblown with
because everything's free.
Stuff. Everything's also free, so you're definitely going to have them. And I think it's the post-kill team world that we live in that every single unit now pretty much has a bunch of different specializations that they can take in terms of weapon options and equipment. And also they've also got some kind of generic game token that has a once per game effect as well that they can also do. And all of that is like a bloat. Whereas before it was like, my guard squad has one specialist weapon in that I'm paying for if I want to take it or I don't. And that was it. And it was cool. I'm just rolling 10 lasgun shots because that's how I'm taking them. Whereas now it's not that at all.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting, I suppose, about 11th edition, if it is going to be iterative, so maybe you can't change things about that sequence and you just have to change it. And I suppose if you were looking at overhauling it, the one I always come back to, and it's not probably very viable, but I think you change the sequence. I think move, shoot, charge, fight is not necessarily super viable anymore in the sense of basically I think you should move into a situation where for 40k where it's charge, move, shoot, fight.
Well, move and charge.
Move and charge is the one, but the charge phase is the first phase.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily hate that. And that would actually solve a lot of things, because then it's like your shooting is basically only going to be pistols with those units. It's not you're not doubling down on shooting and charging, and which effectively is comboing your efficiencies, right? So I think that would help negate the game being too lethal, which is always its problem basically in 8th edition onwards, is that the game has progressively got more and more lethal. So I think that would solve it. But again, you can't. That wouldn't be iterative. I think iterative is basically.
But that would be iterative, though, wouldn't you think? Because you're changing.
No. So to me, iterative is all your codexes stay the same. They roll over. There's no indexes. The core rules are the same. But you're maybe tweaking a few things here and there that don't invalidate your codexes.
Would changing the sequence, so as the charge phase was the first phase after command phase, actually change the game that dramatically?
Do you know what? Maybe not, but I think possibly with abilities. I was thinking if you're changing like the weapon profile, then that would obviously invalidate. Yeah. But you're right. You could change a sequence of a game where you go, cool, the charge phase is now a sub phase of the movement phase. Yeah. The wording of most things would probably still work fine, but maybe it would break things. But in theory, your codex should.
But the thing is most things refer to a charge roll, and there are rules where you get pluses or maybe even additional d6. But again, if you're still only charging 2d6, admittedly, if I was going to be in a situation where I was making the charge roll if I was making the charge rolls a first phase thing, I might consider the idea of a charge roll becoming movement plus 2d6.
Yeah, I mean,
because that would account for what you're losing in terms of distance.
You could go movement plus d6, and then it's a little bit less random. But movement plus 2d6 is almost like a huge move. Although arguably that's what you're already doing, right?
Well, yeah, because that's what you're getting currently. Is you get your move plus 2d6.
Yeah, true.
So I think if you were to make charge moves, and then also what I like about that is again, you still keep the stipulation that reserves come in at the end of the movement phase, and then
does that mean they can't?
They can never charge out of there, unless. But then you tweak that in terms of some of its functionality, so you can make it the. You can have some units that can land in combat.
You could, I guess, or you go, cool, you have movement phase, then charge phase, then shooting, then combat. So you could still say things can drop down, then the next thing is the charge phase, so they can still charge if you really wanted to allow them to be the same. I mean, personally, I would like a tweak to lethal hits, sustained hits, stuff like that, because I think lethal hits and sustained hits are like the real crux of every detachment within the game. Like,
I think they shouldn't stack anymore, though. I think it should just be you choose one crit ability.
Well, that is how AOS works, which I think is a bit fairer. But I also sort of feel like there needs to, like, AOS does it better because also there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do. You get crit mortals, which I actually personally hate, which basically means you get a mortal wound if you get a 6 to hit. But you get like and keywords like anti-hero or anti charge. So if you've been charged, you get a bonus of rend against them, or if you're fighting a hero, you get a bonus to your rend, which is AP.
But it's not always necessarily a rend bonus, though. I mean,
it could be commonly thing, but it could be. So the way they've done it is they've keyworded it more, so you can break these things down to be a bit more granular against certain things. And having more than just lethal hits, sustained hits, and devastating wounds, I think would be better for the game, and that technically wouldn't break your codexes, but it would just mean newer codexes probably operate more efficiently because they now have access to all these extra stuff that comes out. But I don't hate that idea. I think obviously there's a general fatigue around editions, which people get tired about. The fact that you've got to go and buy an index that is then immediately replaced with a codex for certain armies, and it's just buying stuff constantly, whereas I would quite happily keep my codex for another year or two until, a new one comes out in the new edition. That's fine. I don't think we need to index things constantly.
No, I agree. I don't want to see him index it, but I do want to just see some tweaks and changes that clean up some of the things, because I think the problem I have with the way the game plays at the moment is having your cake and eating it too all the time, right? And I think going back to things like maybe like, again, a rule from the past that I think is still valuable is squads shoot squads, as in you're not going, oh, this guy's going to shoot there and this guy's going to shoot there.
Splitting.
Yeah, like it just becomes
fire.
Singular.
Yeah.
Like I think that's important, but I think again that is a stipulation for everything that isn't a vehicle. So if something's got the vehicle keyword, every weapon can fire independently of itself in different directions. But a squad has to shoot in a particular direction.
Make sense. I mean, one of the sort of simplest rules I would like to see, and it does work, is just basically change it to you can only kill what you can see. So if there's one guy poking his head around the wall, you can't kill the whole squad. You can only kill that one model.
I think that would be too exploitative in the way that they've gone with the terrain, though.
But to me, that would negate the need for so much terrain.
I agree with that, but I think the problem is that I think the carrots are done when it comes to that particular argument. I think the problem is you can't divorce the game from what people expect from it now.
Well, you can, because that's literally what 8th edition was. But will they want to redo that?
8th edition wasn't that though. 8th edition was...
No, but it was going against the grain of what was expected. They gave us something completely new and different, and there was a learning curve to it, and there was like a whiplash effect to an extent. But ultimately, it was a positive one, because I think people were kind of sort of fed up with the old system. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are fed up with this system, and I think a lot of people are fed up with the kind of competitive, bland mindset of those, tournament terrain layouts and stuff.
But I think more people like that than don't, though. That's the problem.
I disagree, but I think I think the competitive minority is the vocal majority, but they're not the majority. They're just the people that talk about it the most and the most active online.
That's
talking about it, because ultimately the new cycle of 40K is often driven by events and event results and, net lists. And that's all around gaming and of tournaments. No one's shouting about their cool narrative game that they had at their mate's house because it's not driving the same sort of eyeballs to it. But it doesn't mean that isn't happening or isn't as popular. Or
no, I don't doubt that, and I do agree with you. And again, please don't for a moment think I'm not in favour of what you're saying. Like, I'm on your side of the fence here, mate. I'm just sort of trying to, I don't know, if devil's advocate or being pragmatic about the outlook of it. Fair. But I think, anyway, look, I think we should probably wrap a bow around this one, because that's my buzzword for this episode, wrapping a bow. But I think we should probably call it there, because we've been talking, Phil, for 2 hours and a while.
There's one last thing.
Please, come on.
Because I said we would go back to it, and that is the Primarch.
Oh,
so, basically, do you think there'll be a new Primarch basically between now and the new edition? Or do you think it will be after basically part of the 11th edition? And who would you like to see?
I think there will be a new Primarch between...
and will be a Chaos Primarch as well.
So here's the thing. Between now and the new edition, the most likely outcome is it's a Chaos Primarch.
Even though they've done the big four.
They've done the big four, but that's now where they start to go, oh,
it's exciting.
It's exciting, absolutely. So you're going to get... I don't think... Well, who have you got at that point? You've got flipping heck, Ahriman. Good lord.
Lorgar.
Lorgar was for some reason, Lorgar in my head was Ahriman. So you got Lorgar, Perturabo.
Oh, yeah.
And who's left at that point? Perturabo, Lorgar.
Oh, the Night Lord's guy.
Yes, Kurz, and obviously Horus is like the other one.
Well, he's dead.
And he's dead. And then there's one more that I'm forgetting for the life of me. Because there's 9 traitor Primarchs, isn't there?
Yes.
Lorgar, Perturabo, Conrad Kurz, Horus.
And then we got our 4 existing ones.
And then you got your 4 existing ones, which takes us up to 8. So what's the 9th one? Who are we forgetting? Iron Warriors, World Eaters, Emperor's Children, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children. And then you got, Word Bearers, Night Lords. Who are the other 2 that we're missing here, Phil? Our brains have gone to mush. We've been talking for too long.
I'm going to Google it.
Yeah, come on. Who are we missing, for God's sakes? 9 Traitor, Primarchs and Legions. How have we forgotten this? There's someone out there that is screaming.
Right, so we've got...
Alfarius!
Alfarius.
Alfarius, the Alpha Legion. My God, they're one of my faves. How did I forget Alfarius and the Alpha Legion? I suppose that's by design. I am Alfarius.
Exactly.
God, Alfarius would be cool.
Was he alive?
Omegon or Alfarius or both, who knows? But yes, I think is the long story short, is they're operating in a covert fashion. I think the problem is with Alfarius is to do him right is kind of almost, it's not Alfarius is not going to be the big bad guy that comes and does all the shenanigans. Basically, Kurz is very kind of personal. That would be much more of a kind of, goes to a planet and starts mucking stuff up. Perturabo probably is the easy one, or Lorgar is the other.
I think Iron Warriors are pretty popular as a sort of sub-faction of Chaos. If you would probably pick one, I would say, Iron Warriors. So he would make sense. I think Lorgar would be good just from a point of view of he's sort of like the big bad from Horus Heresy to an extent. So having him in 40K would be quite good, I think. The
thing is if you were going to bring back Perturabo, you'd probably then do Rogel Dawn as the Imperium counter at part. Not that they've ever cared about that, right?
No, true. I still think Lehman Russ is probably, as you say, the most obvious choice if they were to do Loyalist Primarch. Although it feels like if you were going to do him, you would have done him with the tip of a spear for your Ranger refresh of Space Wolves.
But again, it's like a fun second wave, isn't it? And it's the thing is Space Wolves in isolation were always going to be a big release that was going to drive a lot of eyeballs and a lot of excitement. So you have them, but then you also then complement them with a later second wave release, which is more the because Primarch's always just...
Because they do sometimes do, again, going back to the end of an edition, they do tend to do a new army at the very end.
Yeah.
So between now and 11th edition, there could be a new army, which could be Chaos as a sub-faction.
Could be Iron Warriors,
Would sort of make sense. And I think with the Night Lords kill team set that they did originally, and obviously there's one coming out as well, they've kind of proven that there's a sort of demand or an appetite for fleshing out those Chaos sub-factions. I would also happily, see Huron Blackheart redone as a new big bad, and not Primarch model, but he's effectively the Supreme Leader equivalent, and do a Renegade Chaos Space Marines. I think that as its own sort of sub-faction would look really well. Obviously, you've got the Traitor Guard as well, is an untapped source that they have sat on for forever.
Because I have to be honest, I kind of really dislike the fact that Abaddon has just become the de facto leader of Chaos, Chaos Space Marines. And I know he earned that position through all of his escapades in the warp and stuff. But I kind of like the whole kind of setting.
Like everyone just takes them as well. It's like, but there's all these other guys. But there's just no models.
I think that's the thing, though, with it. It's like if they started going like, actually, we want to bring back the idea of there is another legion of traitors or another kind of renegade that is actually kind of challenging Abaddon's position and dominion. But that's the because that was one of the things that was so cool within like the Aaron Dembski Bowden kind of Black Legion books, was the way that he explored the kind of infighting between the different war bands of Chaos Space Marines. That was always super fun. But anyway, I think, yeah, in all probability, if they were going to go down the Chaos Primarch route, I think they'd probably shock and amaze people by going, hey, here's Port Rabo, and people would probably be into that. I think if they go Imperial, I think in all likelihood they go Russ. But the thing is the other thing is, though, in a year where they've released a new sculpt for Fulgrim, and shortly after having done the Lion and Angron, do they use all the big hitters still, or do they actually keep the powder dry on Russ and go, actually, here's Korax, and just be like,
here's a small middling guy that no one's as fussed about.
Well, exactly. Here's Jagatai Khan. Woo!
I think Jagatai Khan would be a popular one, and I felt.
Although isn't he dead?
I thought he just went off somewhere.
No, he went off. I have to go away now.
Probably
Captain Oates did.
Yeah, basically. I might be some time. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you got the White Scars character mini coming out on bike, so I think there's a demand for more niche subfactions getting fleshed out, and I feel like that's probably a better way for Games Workshop to expand the Space Marine range without just being bloat of the main codex, right? So you go, cool, actually, do you know what? We're not going to do a bunch. I mean, they will for the launch box, right? Because they have to. But they would almost be much better off going, cool, this is a White Scars box set, or theme it to White Scars. So it's like, it's cool. It's all jet bikes, guys. And it's a land speeder. It's a new land speeder, new jet bikes.
We already have a new land speeder, mate.
I know, but they could do
new ones.
I don't know, a different type. Do something that's like fast attack themed. That is basically geared at, you like White Scars, here you go. But it ultimately could be generic enough for every Space Marine. But I would almost rather they go, yeah, this is just specifically White Scars, like they've done with the whole range around Space Wolves. They've all got unique units. That's what the launch box is. If you don't want White Scars, you don't have to. Then it gets around the problem of Space Marines are pretty much a finished, or at least maybe this is a 12th edition thing. Space Marines are finished Primaris. They've all made them all. They can sit on them for a few years. They don't need to range refresh anything out. They don't need to make anything new and bloat the codex. They can just be done for a time and let them percolate.
It's bad to think it's been next year will be 9 years, isn't it, since 8th edition came out?
Yeah, because it's 3 years in addition. So oh god,
absolutely wild. Exactly how old we've become. Anyway, there we go. That was us, talking about the delights of what could be in the world of Warhammer 40,000 in the next 9 months. I think we universally agree we're going to get an end times event, and we hope that it's going to actually be sort of an interesting narrative that moves us into the orc stuff that is heavily rumoured to happen next. I think, as well, we're expecting an iterative version of the rule set, and we're expecting some kind of Primarch to return at some point, as well as a potential for things going away still, specifically aircraft. I think they're done. I can't see.
And you're convinced about MGF terrain?
I'm convinced 100% that that's coming, because I think, as I said before, perception is reality, and I think the way that the 40K player base engage with the hobby, I think Games Workshop, old fogies like us wanting it to be this fun narrative gameplay experience, are just fighting against the tide at this stage.
Possibly. I mean, here's the thing. The problem with terrain is Games Workshop doesn't sell enough of it. They've got amazing sculpts. They've got Sector Mechanicus terrain. They've got the old Imperial ruins. Most of the stuff is just out of stock constantly, and the stuff that they do sell is very limited and is also very expensive. If you just slash the price in half, Games Workshop, and you'll sell 10 times the amount of terrain, because people want it, but it's just too expensive, I would say. But I appreciate that they're never going to do it. But what they're going to do is, here's some mildly expensive MDF stuff.
Yeah.
And it feels cheap, but not that cheap.
Yeah. And I think, but I think, as I say, if you include it in the box set, you've just standardized it, and then everyone's got what they want, because now everyone can gladly play the game the way it should be played.
True. Mine, I think, will just be going in the bin, or selling it on eBay because it's like, I don't want that.
You never know, though, Phil. In 10 more years' time, when you're in your mid 50s, living the dream, you'll be
here's the thing: when I'm too old to see what I'm gluing together and painting,
you'll be nostalgic for it. You'll be like, oh, I remember when they did the old card terrain, the old MDF.
Well, here's the thing: if it was done, okay, the only way to do it is you've got to do nostalgia for second edition cardboard terrain.
That's it. That's what they need.
So it's got to look like that, but better.
Yeah.
Then it would work. Or the old Necromunda terrain that they did from years ago. But that's not even ruined, so they wouldn't do that.
Well, whatever the case, that was us waffling on the topic together in the same place, as we will have said already. But yeah, who knows what it's going to turn out like from an editing perspective, or more specifically from a kind of leveling perspective, because yeah, that's fun. But anyway, cheers for that, mate. We're going to go on to the 5-star review. Thanks for listening, everybody. Transitional noise. Obviously, I haven't edited this episode yet, so I can't say for sure whether the experiment of you and me being in the same place has been worthwhile. We definitely need to consider buying like a mixing desk and getting like 2 microphones and doing it properly if it's going to be a more regular occurrence. But how have you enjoyed, Phil, the experience of, being in the same place for a change when doing this? I think we've only ever done this once before, maybe twice, actually, I think we've done.
Yeah, I think we have done it a couple of times. Once in a hotel room, I believe,
and another time in a car.
People. Oh God, yes. I mean, yeah, it feels fine. Not much different than normal, but it was good.
We'll see what the vibe is in terms of how it comes out. Whether the
it's more down to audio quality, I think, than anything else.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And obviously, you guys at home, or ladies, or whoever you may be, should let us know in the comments as well. If this is good, if it sounds nice, or if it's just Dan's booming voice washing me out. And just a faint echo that needs subtitles, you can let us know.
But that's something we could potentially resolve with, as I say, like a mixing desk and some other stuff if we actually invested more in the idea of doing it together. I think that's the thing. It's more, does us being in the same place create more of a kind of natural kind of flow of conversation, or are we now just so grizzled and veteran-like when it comes to this?
It's the same, I think.
Yeah, I kind of got the vibe. It's the same.
We both do long monologues, and that's the format.
Yeah, no, we've definitely hit our stride, haven't we, when it comes to these things?
For sure.
Anyway, look, we're going to talk about the 5-star review and then call it another episode done. This one comes via Smith147 and has been given to us on Apple Podcasts of Great Britain. Thank you very much to Smith147 for doing this. It's massively appreciated. And obviously, if any of you out there are considering giving us a 5-star review, we kind of did the hard sell in the intro, which is we'd really love it if you'd consider doing that, because it would massively help us, because we're running out. So that's a whole thing. Anyway, the 5-star review from Smith147 reads, from a new player's perspective, this is the best podcast. Strong. I recently bought back into 40K for the 4th time. Tower Necrons aren't for me, with the Space Wolf box, and stumbled across Look Out, Sir. This is the only podcast I could find that wasn't meta-focused and more based around passion and enjoyment for the game and setting. As a newer player, I found this refreshing. The fear of painting up a mini while a podcast tells you it's unplayable isn't the most fun. It isn't, to be fair. Look at my half-painted Riptide... Ripidicus from AOS? What the heck is a Ripidicus for AOS? You got any frame of reference there, Phil?
Where am I looking?
Just here. Look at my half-painted Ripidactyls. Ripidactyls.
Yeah, from the Seraphon.
Oh, there you go. My dyslexia got the better of me there. Anyway, yes. No, God, yeah, fair. It's also nice to find a podcast that talks about all GW games, not just 40K, but AOS, Kill Team, and Old World 2. If you're looking for a great podcast, you can't go wrong with this one. Mate, that honestly is super lovely to hear. And again, it's always been our aspiration to kind of create something that is a bit more of a kind of generalist, hobbyist kind of thing. I think it doesn't help us massively in the algorithm or even in the kind of overall kind of discoverability side of things. But I do think that, the people that it lands with and kind of shares that kind of passion for all things kind of GW hobby, yeah, I think it works well for them. And so we're grateful and glad that you found us and that you enjoy us, but also that, it's validating in a way to hear that, the kind of format that we've landed upon is appreciated and enjoyed. So thank you very much, Smith147. And to elaborate on all of that, it can only be Phil.
Well, thank you, Smith147. I'm glad you enjoy the show. Glad you're a new player, newish, coming back in for the fourth time. Fourth time's a charm. Obviously, Space Wolves, good pick, excellent models, fun to play with. And, as we've speculated in this episode, maybe a Lehman Russ will be coming your way. Glad you're liking the very sort of generic vibes of our 40K plus podcast covering all the systems. And as there's only 2 more codexes for the rest of the edition, I'm sure we'll be covering a lot more other topics for the rest of the year. So thank you.
Gotta hope so. But until then, cheers, everyone. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.